You know, I used to be really good at academics. In school, I always strove to be the top of the class. I was put into gifted and talented classes and things like that for advanced students. I found them all to be very boring, quite honestly. But I graduated high school, I went to college, joined the military, served in the Marine Corps, and have had interesting experiences ever since. I found out about flat earth theory, or the flat earth perspective, while I was researching the hollow earth theory. I had already been looking into other things. I had already learned not to trust my government. The same people, back when I was an academic, that I would respect, that I would admire, you know, I envied those who had their degrees and their diplomas. I waved at the police as they drove past, you know. I trusted that those who were in power above me knew about whatever problems that should concern me and that they were going to take care of it. And then I started on my own path. Then I broke away from all of my conditioning, or at least started to. And I have been convincing myself since then to look into the questions that I have about life for myself, instead of just allowing the television to program me or to listen to the conditioning by the school system. And the reason I wanted to do this video today, this video is going to be a flat earther, who is myself, allowing for those of you who still believe in the ball earth to present your case for the ball earth. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because every time I watch flat earth videos and, you know, the news does a broadcast and they're talking about flat earth or whatnot, typically they always put the flat earthers on the defensive. They always come out with, well, how do you explain this, and how do you prove this, and what's your evidence for this or that? But you see, I have a whole playlist of flat earth videos. That's what I started doing, that I was really passionate about on YouTube. And I've done a lot of videos about that. But whenever I come across all of these other videos where people are insisting that flat earthers prove their position, I started to realize, the more I studied, wait a minute, my belief, my perspective, and my worldview is on the side of the majority. If you look at all time, which perspective has had the most popularity or has been considered common knowledge, flat earth beats out the globe model by far. So I put myself into the majority category. The globe model is brand new, relatively speaking. It's only been around for a very few hundred years, if that. And it's only really been popular and been accepted worldwide sometime in the past 100 years or so. I could be off by that, but still, even if you do 300 or 400 years, it's not much in comparison to the bigger picture. So I am not here to defend my views or my perspective on the flat earth theory, nor am I here to put down those who believe in the same manner that I once did. I once was an expert at Jeopardy. I once was an expert at trivia. You know, I knew all the little factoids that I was told were really important going into my adulthood, which don't help me whatsoever, and haven't in my adulthood, except for basic communication skills and basic math. But without any further ado, I do want to ask the moderators to help me out. The only thing I ask is that everyone in the chat try to be respectful to one another, okay? It's just a difference in perspective, okay? That's how I'm seeing it, and that's how I would like us to address this particular topic. So there's no need for insults or put downs or sarcasm or anything like that. Let's just talk about it. Now, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat so that I can see it here on my side. And if you have a comment for me, highlight my name or type out JayDreamerZ. You have to spell it and capitalize the correct letters, and it will highlight on my end. I'll go ahead and read your question or your comment, and we can chat for as long as you guys want to. I know there will be a lot of flat earthers in the chat. I want to ask you all to carry yourselves as best as you can and as respectfully as you can going forward, not just in this video or in this chat, but anytime that you meet somebody that has an opposing view from you, anyone that thinks differently than you do. I encourage everybody to treat each other with respect. It's philosophy. This is working things out together. There's no need to declare war on one another or start fights or arguments or name call. Those things are beneath those of us who are on a higher path. I expect that from some, but from others I expect more. Okay, so with that being said, oh, I did ask a quote at the beginning of the video here. Let's see, I don't know if anyone got it, but the quote was, "You dropped 150 grand on an effing education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library." Okay, I started doing the accent a little late. But that's from Good Will Hunting, and it's one of my favorite movies. He's basically talking to an educated academic who went to some Harvard, you know, preppy, uppity school, and they spend all this money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, that's rich people money, you know, to get an education that you could have got at your local library. One thing that I did hear on the latest news interview with Flat Earthers is they really esteem professors in college. Now let's ask, here's a flat earther who built a rocket and tried to blast himself into space. Now let's ask the college professor what he thinks, you know. Just because a person is a college professor or a doctor or a wizard or anything does not mean that they are smarter than anybody else. We all have our little areas of expertise, things that we're more interested in and therefore know more about than other people do. I don't need a stamp, I don't need a diploma, a certification, none of those things. And I'm not impressed by the experts who are always called in to tell us, oh, that's ridiculous, the earth isn't flat, it's round. And that always kind of irks me a little bit, because round is two-dimensional, you know. These pictures, you can see the earth is round in the pictures. However, round is not three-dimensional, right? Round can be like a penny or a plate or a frisbee. Those are round as well. Anyhow, okay, so this video is dedicated to those of you who are just warriors for your ball earth theory, your ball earth paradigm. For those of you who go into all of the other videos and the chats and everything, and you just scream out, I'm not talking about trolls, I'm talking about those people who are really passionate about their ball earth theory. You see, the flat earthers are always put on the defensive, but I would love to see a news program, which I probably never will, but I would love to see a news program come out and say, so-and-so believes that the earth is a spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying ball through an infinite vacuum. Why do you believe this stuff, you know? And like, kind of put like the mainstream thought on the defensive. All right, let's jump into the chat. I'm going to get to as many of these as I can. Sailing Bangarang says, JayDreamerZ, sometimes I see the moon and the sun together near each other at the same time, multiple times per month, which is also very much possible on a flat earth world. On a flat world, you can still have the sun and the moon in the same area of the sky. E.g. Epic Gamer says, JayDreamerZ, what if the earth isn't really flat, but the patch of earth that we inhabit is fairly flat, but the rest of it is undiscovered? I think that was said. I think that's a great question. And you know what? I love questions that start off with, what if? Those are my favorite questions in the world. What if this? What if that? You see, one of the problems that I feel like we as a society of people have fallen into is that we have been conditioned to, one, know all the answers. If you don't know every single answer about a particular subject, that makes you a layman. That makes you ignorant on the subject. And that's really not true, right? We don't have to have all of the answers about something. We can have a preponderance of evidence. That's what it's called in a court of law. When you have so much evidence, even little tiny pieces of evidence, they all end up getting heavier and weightier as you add them together, as you put them all together and look at them collectively. Flatty McFlatface says, @JayDreamerZ, and that's it. So anyhow, this is for the ball earth believers. The ball earth believers to come forward and say, well, I think that the earth is a ball because, right? I want to read you guys something. And I'm going to look at the chat here while I go as well. But I want to read you something that I posted in the community section on my channel. And this is something that I wrote. Now, the reason why flat earth sounds so ridiculous is because it's because of the way these things are worded. You know, whenever flat earth is brought up, people always word things so that it sounds more ridiculous than the reality. For example, if the earth were flat, all the cats would have pushed everything off the edge by now, right? That's just a ridiculous statement in order to exaggerate how ridiculous the concept of a flat earth sounds to somebody who's not used to it. One second, I'm just pulling this up here. So, because people typically talk about the flat earth with such ridiculous descriptions, or fantastic descriptions, I should say, which makes sense, I understand. I felt the exact same way when I first came across it, right? You got to understand, flat earthers are not, for the most part, well, let me talk for myself. I was not a flat earther who just saw something on YouTube and just went, oh, I saw it on the internet, it's true. No, I researched it. I looked into it. I compared my own notes. I did my own experiments. Okay, so I want to read this. This is what I wrote on my communities tab. And I put, here is my response to the many videos that are trying to debunk flat earth theory. The burden of proof is on the spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying, pear-shaped, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, lava-filled water ball with an invisible and unknown tractor beam shooting out in all directions from its solid metal center and headed on an inevitable collision course with some distant and life-ending object while circling a giant fireball in a nearly perfect vacuum, which doesn't suck the air away due to the globular tractor beam, and circled by a giant flying dusty rock that was a makeshift golf course for humans who strapped themselves to a missile wearing deep water scuba equipment so that they could live stream the littering of an ancient world, beaming a television signal from over 200,000 miles away to the box that gives people their programs so that they could claim the land of an entire world as being the property of a business corporation named the United States of America, who steal from, lie to, poison, etc., all who live and breathe. The burden of proof is not on the immovable plane of existence, also known as flat earth, which had been established by the so-called gods, survived the test of time through the greatest civilizations, and known by the majority of all cultures as common knowledge until just less than a couple of hundred years ago, if that. So I posted that a little while ago. And, you know, some people thought that that makes sense, and some people didn't think that that makes sense. Okay, let me jump into the chat here. A perceiver feeling bored, says JayDreamerZ. Flat Earth makes sense as the firmament is the reason for the bend of the rainbow. And you know what? I tend to agree with that. Live Truth. Oh, the chat's going nuts right now. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. Live Truth says, JayDreamerZ, how is it that we are flying through our galaxy at 666,000 miles an hour and all the stars stay in the same exact pattern, even though they are all different distances from Earth? Well, clearly it's a rhetorical question that you're asking. Basically, he's saying that that's an evidence for the flat Earth. But here's the deal. I don't have to prove the flat Earth. I really don't. Neither do you. Nobody does, okay? Flat Earth proving is for those who are seeking out the answers for the flat Earth paradigm. For those who are looking into it. For those who are researching it, right? Guys, women, men, it doesn't fall on us to go out and to prove anything to the rest of the world. It's not Christianity, it's not Judaism, it's not Islam, it's not something that we need to go knocking on everyone's door and saying, these are the facts, this is what I know, etc. This is the way it's always been. It's always been this way. The spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying, pear-shaped ball theory is brand new. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to defend anything. I would start turning the tables and asking questions to the ball earthers. For example, what's in the middle? And people always ask us, well, what's underneath the flat earth, you know? Because they imagine it being this frisbee out in space, which is not how I picture it, and it's not how I envision it. But that's how the media spins it, so that's what everyone thinks that flat earthers imagine when we think about the world that we live on. So why don't you ask, you know, some globe earthers, hey, what's in the middle of the earth? You know? I mean, if we're so certain, and then they're going to tell you, well, it's an iron nickel core, you know, I was taught that in school, etc. The question is, obviously, how do we know that? How can you be sure? How do we know? How do those people who discovered it and gave us the information, how do they know what's at the very middle of the earth? You know, these are ball questions for the ball earth believers. Oh, let me get back in the chat here. Sorry about that. My chat is going nuts right now. Conspiracy Mystic says hello. Flatty McFlatface says infinite flat plane, infinite sky. Big Nick, hey, what's up, Nick? Says JayDreamerZ, I feel we are smaller than we believe. Like when we compare an ant to a blue, who's to say we are not ants on a Titan size being now? What are we really on? And those are great questions too. Those are the types of inquiries and wonders that we should be allowed and to have the freedom to wonder about, to speculate, to hypothesize. Right? We should be allowed to hypothesize. And this is another thing that kind of gets to me sometimes, is flat earthers, when people make videos about us and what we believe in and stuff, you know, they typically speak for us as if this is what flat earthers think. This is what they believe. But we're not given the freedom to wonder, to ponder, to question. You know, questions are ridiculed and looked down on. Sailing Bangarang says, JayDreamerZ, will we be doing experiments on our sailboat? Whenever I go out, I'm always doing experiments. I experiment all of the time. Even if it's just simple observation, right? Making a hypothesis, observing, things like that. I do that all the time. Perceiver Feeling Bored says, JayDreamerZ, do you think the cosmic egg universe theory had any credibility? Yes, I very much do. Discover with Landfanty says, JayDreamerZ, what do you think about the cosmic egg theory? Okay, so I love the cosmic egg theory. I think it's wonderful, and I'm right there with it. As with all things, I take the information with a grain of salt, and I put it onto my library, my Rolodex of my brain, as I call it, and I take it with me as I go. So anyhow, I'm so sorry if I'm skipping anybody in the chat. What are my thoughts on Nikola Tesla? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, everyone. I'm looking for questions and comments that are from globe earthers. I know everybody wants to talk right now, okay? But this is a platform for the globe earthers specifically, okay? So that, you see, I'm not a part of a group. I'm not. And I hope that you're not either, okay? But I'm not on the flat earth bandwagon. I haven't just jumped on and said, whatever they believe, I believe. You know what I mean? And that's not what this is about. This is about allowing people who are globe believers to get it out, to express it. A lot of people have never even thought about the reasons why they believe that the earth is a ball shape, right? Or a pear-shaped, or whatever shape the, you know, mainstream scientists are saying that it is. Oh, and that's the other thing. It's not mainstream science that we are against. We use science. I use the scientific method all of the time. Science means knowledge, okay? You gain knowledge by trial and error. You gain knowledge by observation. These are the things that many flat earthers, including myself, have done in our own experiments, in our own observations. So don't go out there saying, oh, flat earthers just hate science. Let me tell you something. Science is not a person. It's not an entity. It doesn't have feelings. It's not right. It's not wrong. It simply means knowledge, okay? And if you acquire knowledge, you are a scientist, period. What level of scientist, and if you want to start comparing one person's knowledge to another, then you're going to get yourself wrapped up into a big rabbit hole. JayDreamerZ, Globe Earther question. What do you say to those who say we see over curvature due to refraction? Okay, yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so this question comes from, let's see, this question comes from, where does it go? Algiz Rune. Sorry if I mispronounced that. So the question is, what do I say to those globe earthers who say that we see over the curvature of the earth due to refraction? Basically that the light is being bent and the light is curving around the earth itself, keeping the entire image intact when it hits my eyes. Not sure what just happened there, but I'm going to keep on going. So my response to that is that if it's some sort of an illusion, if it's if the light is bending around, I would absolutely expect distortions to be clearly evident. I would expect images to appear upside down, refracted, a mirror image. I would not expect the exact same perfect image to be replicated on my end after the light bends around the earth. Okay? The second thing I would say is that I don't think that light bends around the earth. Not in the way that we can just see complete city skylines and mountains and things like that, with such perfection and clarity. So that's my response. That's what I would say. I can't be tricked into thinking that what I'm seeing is a mirage when I see the exact replica with no flaws whatsoever. And this is supposed to be curving around the earth. What if the image misses my eye level, right? What if the light bends and it goes too high? Why does the light bend perfectly to meet my eyes 6 feet 2 inches off of the ground and bends perfectly to give us a perfect image to shorter and taller people, right? What if the light bends and it went up a little too high over my line of sight, you know? I wouldn't see anything then. But anyhow, the media is passing things like that off as a mirage, as a trick of the eyes, a trick of light. You know, this is the type of talk that I hear when I listen to how magicians explain their magic tricks. Okay, the simplicity of it for me is that you can see those distant objects because we're on a level playing field, right? You can keep on seeing. If you took out all the crap that's in the atmosphere and what happens with our perspective and whatnot, you would be able to continue seeing on for quite some time. Anyway, I hope that helped to give you some more information about that question. I did get a donation. I want to say thank you to thedailyplane.com, who says, Jay, globe earthers don't exist because everyone lives on a level, motionless earth. Well, I agree with you, and thank you for the donation. But this is more about a mentality. It's not about the facts of the situation. This is about perspective. This is about belief. This is about your mind, your thoughts, okay? Because our experience is very real based on our own perspective, right? Our perspective makes things very real to us. It's just like when you dream and you have a very realistic dream that you wake up and you're crying or you're afraid or you're on cloud nine and you're really happy. But in the end, it's whatever shape that it is, right? And I agree with you. Now, there's a lot of really good questions to be asked about that, but let me see if I can get some other questions here. James J. Rock says, JayDreamerZ, if the scientists were right, why did they write all of these insane formulas? That is a really good question. Okay, so here's my perspective on that. I believe that we have people like Albert Einstein who have gone into deep details trying to mathematically figure out and prove the hypothesis that they have made up. Okay, so basically, I believe that they have lied. I say they, I mean the world rulers, the people who have been in charge of us for thousands of years, or hundreds at the very least, that they lied initially, okay? They needed the public to buy that lie, right? So they tried to make sense of it, right? They said, this is the answer. We don't know how that's the answer. We don't know why that's the answer. So let's make the math match the answer, right? So I believe that a lot of these equations that people have come up with, that these are theorems or theories in number form, and they are written with the basis being that the earth is a globe. So the math is being set out to prove that the earth is a globe. The math is being set out to match and support the lie. So that's why I believe that they're constantly trying to rework things, constantly trying to figure out their formulas. They're constantly improving upon them, because there's a lot of questions that people constantly are asking. There's a lot of really good points that people are making and saying, hey, well, yeah, I see what you did there, but what about this over here? And then the mathematicians have to scramble and, come up with another way to explain something that can be easily explained by a child. It's very simple. So much of this is very simple, but I'm not going to go into proving it to you. I'm just here to talk about your world with you. Let's see what else we can find here. I'm just jumping in and out of the chat, so if I miss your question or your comment, just go ahead and write it. A perceiver feeling bored says, what if our flat earth reality is a Mandela effect to globe earthers? They shifted from their globe earth reality to our flat earth reality. That thought has occurred to me as well, and I did think about doing a Mandela effect video. Like, hey, remember when the earth was a ball? It's not anymore. Go ahead and look out of your airplane, it's totally flat. I didn't end up doing that just because, I felt like it was a little too much. Big Nick says, JayDreamerZ, have you ever played Kingdom Hearts on PlayStation? No, I have not. When the main character travels world to world, the worlds look like field planes rather than orb planets. Could this be symbolic of the truth? I like where you're going with that. You know what? I was just thinking of the exact same thing a little bit earlier today. Let me tell you something. This has nothing to do with fact. It's got nothing to do with science. It's got nothing to do with math. It's got nothing to do with experiments or anything. The reason that various worlds in video games and role-playing games and stories and things of this nature, the reason why I believe they're often depicted as planes of existence instead of spherical balls out in a vacuum is because a plane of existence can touch other planes of existence. It can touch other realms, other worlds that are sealed off from this one, right? It's more fun, basically. Just to be really simple about it, a flat earth is more fun, okay? There's a lot more opportunity on a flat earth than on a world where you're stuck, where you can't leave. You can't go to other worlds. You can't meet alien civilizations. Your representatives supposedly can do that for you so that you can live vicariously through those who have supposedly seen it with their own eyes or done it, Project E90 says, JayDreamerZ, why doesn't the sun change size throughout the day? Well, why don't you tell me? This is not a proving the flat earth video. I have no need to prove anything to anybody. This is my walk. This is my path. I walk on a flat earth, right? I'm willing to listen what it's like for you to walk around on a ball and to not fall off when you get underneath, okay? I'm willing to listen to these things, and I'm willing to entertain them and to talk about them, right? But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to explain to you all why the earth is flat or why I think it's flat or any of that. I've done that in many, many videos. Feel free to go check out my flat earth playlist. Big Nick says, I like the way you think, JayDreamerZ. I like the way you think too, Nick. James J. Rock says, JayDreamerZ, why does the sun appear to set over the horizon? Is this just atmospheric interference with the light? Well, I could talk about this all day long. I could talk about why it appears to me that the earth is flat or how the cosmos work on a flat earth. But the deal is, I'm not gonna. I don't have to. I mean, I would like to, believe me, I could talk about this stuff all day long, and I have, and I do all the time in my real life. That's why I do this, because I talk about these things all the time to people at the grocery store, to people at the Goodwill, to people in line at places. You know, I pick people's brains when it's appropriate. But what I'm here to do today is to listen to the ball earthers, because you see, for me, it's a fantasy. This whole idea of let me tell you the story, okay? I'm not going to look at the chat right now. I'm going to jump back in a second. Thank you, Mrs. Tony. Let me show you guys my shirt while I'm at it. I got this at the Renaissance Festival, and I don't know if you could see it because it's green, but it's this awesome like tree of life deal. Anyway, yeah, it's really cool. I wish I could wear more green, but because I have a green screen, I really can't. So let me explain something to everyone. As a flat earther, I'm not speaking for all flat earthers, and no flat earther can speak for all the other flat earthers. The only thing that we agree upon is that it's a plane of existence, that it's not a spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying space ball, okay? Which is why I believe that the movie Spaceballs was called that, because it's ridiculous. But as a flat earther, when I hear the story that mainstream scientists have told me in my schools, right? Which I have questioned many times. I got through the school system. I graduated. I got my B average. You know what I mean? I didn't do too bad for myself. I was a scholar. I was an academic. I was an intellectual, a little too much at times. But now that I've broken away from those things, when I hear this story of our world according to mainstream scientific thought, it sounds like a fantasy. It sounds like fiction. It does not sound like fact whatsoever. It sounds like something out of I mean, I don't even really want to compare it to the Lord of the Rings, because there's more truth in the Lord of the Rings than there is in any documentary about space that I've ever seen. So when people tell me, at first there was a giant fireball in the middle of a vacuum, I stop right there. I'm like, wait a minute, how's the fireball in the vacuum? Wouldn't the vacuum put out the fire? Oh no, it's really strong. It's like a super fireball. It's more powerful than the infinite vacuum around it. Okay, that sounds a little weird, but let's continue on, right? I'll listen. So people say, all right, well, there was a giant fireball in this vacuum, and it just stayed lit all the time. And that giant fireball has a tractor beam. It's a globular spherical tractor beam right in the middle, and it's constantly tractor beaming everything towards itself. It's constantly pulling everything in. And I go, okay, that's weird. How does that work? How does the tractor beam work? You know? Well, it's not important how it works. The only thing that's important is that it does work. So I say, okay, I'll give you that. Let me hear the rest of the story. Well, there was a giant fireball with a huge tractor beam inside of it. And what happened was, a long time ago, before there was any other balls circling the giant fireball, you had this, you had little pieces of dirt, basically, okay? This sounds so ridiculous, I'm sorry. I will laugh, I will, because it sounds funny to me. You had little pieces of dirt, right? And each one of those pieces of dirt also had a little tractor beam inside of it. And it was trying to tractor in anything that's near it. Now, because they're so small, those pieces of dirt have to really come close to one another. And fortunately, there was enough pieces of dirt that came just close to one another that they all hugged. They all gave each other a big tractor beam hug, and they made a bigger piece of dirt, right? And that dirt wasn't solid. That dirt was just kind of spinning around. It was all very loose to begin with because it has to spin, right? It's all spinning. Well, why does it have to spin? Well, just listen to the story, okay? So the dirt is spinning. It's spinning around. Oh, I know what happens. I know what happens. The dirt is spinning around like when you throw up a pizza ball in the air and it gets flat. And that's how we get our world, right? No. It doesn't flatten out just because it's spinning. Because it has its tractor beam. All the little pieces of dirt, they combine their powers, they combine their tractor beam powers, and they make one big tractor beam. And so it doesn't spread out. It actually, they all hug each other, and they continuously hug each other. And then because they're hugging so much, they get really hot because they're getting excited because they haven't hugged another piece of rock in a long time. They're getting really hot. So they're getting so hot that they're starting to melt. Do you hear how ridiculous this sounds? When you explain it with a childlike mentality to other people, this just sounds laughable. And this is how it appears to me, okay? So you've got this early stage Earth that's spinning, that's got it's developing into one huge tractor beam, and it's spinning this way, and it's wobbling, and it's tilting, and it's orbiting around the giant fireball. And then at some point in time, nobody knows when, nobody knows how, nobody knows what happened, but there was a really big rock that just kind of like eased up next to our world, right? Our world was, it sucked in with its tractor beam force a bunch of other space dust and rocks and debris, you know, that came from... Where did they come from? Where'd all the space dust and rocks and debris came from? Well, they came from nothing. See, there was nothing, and then all of a sudden it made rocks and debris. Okay. Anyhow, let's move a little forward, okay? There was a giant rock, and this giant rock collected a lot of dust, and it just stuck right next to us because the tractor beam was just strong enough to pull in that giant rock that's 1/4 the size of our world, and kept it there, right? It kept it there because that spin made it want to leave, but the tractor beam pulled it in, and it also has its own tractor beam too. And it's tractor beaming the Earth, and the Earth is tractor beaming it, and then both of them are being tractor beamed by the sun. Well, why doesn't that giant rock crash into the Earth? Because of that spin, right? None of this is making any sense. This sounds fantastic. It doesn't sound like fact. It sounds like this something that's made up, like a story that you tell to a child, you know? Anyhow, that's how I see the globular. And that's what it is. It's globular, okay? It's a globe. It's globular. That's how I see that. Then you have your mascots, your science mascots that come in and they say, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, well, the Earth is pear-shaped. Pear-shaped. Why is that not being repeated by any other science mascot except the only people that repeat that are the flat earthers? Because that sounds ridiculous. Doesn't that sound like something out of a made-up story? The Earth is pear-shaped? I mean, you can see in all the pictures, it's clearly circular, okay? 360 degrees. They always portray it as that, except for this particular shot right there with the car out in space, okay? This sounds fantastic. And it's not like, oh, well, JayDreamerZ, it sounds fantastic to you because your simple mind just can't wrap itself around the intellectualness of the mathematics. No, man, there's no car out in space, okay? That's not real. That looks fake because it is fake. You can tell that the light coming off of that comes from a stage light, you know? We know what those look like. We know what the light looks like, you know? You can tell that this is not the light from the sun on my face. Anyway. All right, I'm back in the chat. Let me see if I can find some questions here. Flatty McFlatface Army of One says, JayDreamerZ, I was watching the Pixar film Cars the other day. When they're in the desert, the mountains and hills in the background are old cars, just like Titans. A little besides the point, but yes, I have also actually seen that little breadcrumb, and there is a good reason behind that. All right, the questions are coming back up. Lewis Hackett, I remember him, says the horizon is the curve. The fact that things disappear bottom to top rather than receding is an increasingly translucent haze is the manifestation of a curved world. Okay, so Lewis is talking about the horizon. He says the horizon is the curve, okay? The horizon, and I'm going to retort, okay? Horizon comes from horizontal. A horizontal line. Just like in the movie Moana, where the sky meets the sea, there's a line, right? That's the song that they sing. It's a horizontal line. There's no curve or anything. So bringing up the horizon for me does not support a ball. You know what I mean? It supports a plane of existence. It's a horizontal line. It's the horizon. Just that's the simplicity behind it. But he goes on to say the fact that things disappear bottom to top rather than receding in increasingly translucent haze is the manifestation of a curved world. Well, I can tell you that everything does disappear in a translucent haze depending on how high up you are, okay? That's the reason that I can't see Big Ben from where I am. Not because of the curvature of the world, right? And on a good day, maybe it would be refracted enough so that I could see it. I can't see Big Ben because there's stuff in the air. It's as simple as that. And the more stuff that's in the air, the less far I can see because that stuff compiles one on top of another and it creates that sort of haze that you're talking about. But yeah, the whole boats disappearing over the curvature of the earth, that's never ever been something that's convinced me since I've learned the explanation for it. And the explanation for that is that the boats aren't going over any type of curvature whatsoever. They're just getting really, really far away, and so they start to disappear. And boats going over the curvature makes no sense and is absolutely disproved by cameras that people have gone out. I've gone out even, not to the beach, but some other places. You take your camera, you go out, and you zoom in on an object that you can't see with your eyes. An object that has disappeared over the curve that we would say, right? That object hasn't disappeared because you can bring it right back into view if you simply zoom in on it. As long as there's nothing obstructing your view, you would be able to zoom right back in on that object. And I've found many videos online where people have done this. It's one of the most simplest experiments that you can do to just prove that nothing's disappearing over any curve whatsoever. You can bring it right back into view. And no camera has any special refraction lens that's going to take the light and bend it around the curvature of the earth in order to bring the object back into view. Okay? This only proves that the earth is not a ball, that objects are not disappearing over any curvature whatsoever. Good comment there, Lewis. Roman Hoax says, JayDreamerZ, how did the priesthood, I mean the scientists, determine the mass of a sun 93 million miles away by looking at it? These are used in their equations. That's clearly a rhetorical question. I agree with you. It sounds ridiculous. How can you figure out all of this stuff? You don't even know what's inside of the earth. You don't know what's at the bottoms of the ocean. We don't know hardly anything about our own world that we live in. And yet, all of the experts are telling us all of the detailed intricacies of planets that are millions of miles away, of stars that are millions of miles away. They can tell you what's inside and outside on those worlds, but we don't even know what's inside of our world. I'm not too convinced. A perceiver feeling bored says, JayDreamerZ, why do you think it's hard to argue with globe earthers who do their research? Does it have anything to do with the science of this current age being less logical, more made up of jargon? I would say, I would tend to agree with that. Basically what he's saying is, a lot of times when globe earthers who claim to be a part of the scientific community, when they're trying to explain away why the earth is a globe, it can get very complicated. And it's not complicated. I don't say that in a way like, I don't know, my job is just to milk the cows. I don't understand the Pythagorean theorem. You know what I mean? Like, no, that's not what it's about. We're not all a bunch of backcountry woods, you know. And even if we were, that still wouldn't make a person stupid. So whenever these people are explaining things that are trying to go by all this science, all this math, the problem is that your senses are telling you in simple language and feeling and observation and experience that the world that we live on is a plane of existence. So they have to fight against that with all of the intellectual wording and all of the walkarounds, you know. I've found that many people in our world are conditioned to just talk and talk and talk until they feel like they've said something. You know what I mean? A lot of times people don't just say, you know what? That's a good point. I'm not sure. I don't know. You know, And that's what we've been conditioned to do. We've been conditioned to submit to those who are above us, whether it be a pastor, a preacher, a teacher, a professor, whatever it may be, and to say, well, that person has a title, that person's recognized, I'm going to believe whatever that person says that it is. And I'm not all for that. I'm all for doing your own research and looking into things yourself. Adam Young says, JayDreamerZ, what do you think about the celestial objects being special projections for each observer? Well, I've never really considered it to be, like he's talking about the stars up in the sky, or the planets or whatnot, those things up in the sky that we see, that those are special and unique to each individual or something along those lines. I haven't really heard that one. But I have my own ideas about the stars and the dome and the sky and the earth and the heavens and what's outside of it all. One thing I can tell you is they always say, flat earthers think that they live on a disc flying through space, a spinning disc flying through space. Nope, I don't think it spins. I'm not 100% completely sure that it is a disc at all. I lean more towards an infinite plane, at least infinite to the point of the end of the computer programming. But then we get into simulation theory. And I definitely don't believe that we are moving or flying through any type of an empty vacuum. If anything, I lean towards space being more liquid form than an empty vacuum. Good question, by the way. All right, Big Nick is back up to bat with another question. He says, JayDreamerZ, do you think that we all find out the truth after we pass from this lifetime we are experiencing now, or will some of us never acknowledge the truth of our reality? I can tell you this, Nick. I firmly believe that every path that every person is on gets us to the same place. Some people take longer, some people take other routes or whatnot, but in the end, we remember these things, okay? You see, this is our job. It's our job. It's our whole goal. It's our whole purpose in life is to remember these things that we have forgot, okay? And for those of you who think that we live and we die and that's all there is to our existence, that might be a hard concept for you to understand. But I believe that we don't die. I don't believe in death. I believe that the body lives on, that energy cannot be created or destroyed, that it is, and it always is, and it's always working perpetually and changing perpetually into something better. So, by the time you're done, you will know these things. Everybody will. And you'll know so much more, right? You can look back on things like this and you can think, wow, how childish. All right, Louis Hackett is back up to bat with another comment. He says, JayDreamerZ, the boats that are brought back by cameras by simply zooming in are only smaller than a single pixel on the camera. When the boat is big enough to see, keep watching them bottom to top. Well, I hear your position on that, but what I can tell you is that pixel or no pixel, when I go out there with my eyeballs and I look at a boat and I say, it's disappeared over the curve, I have no right to say, oh, wait a minute. It's a pixel. It's still there. It's really it's a pixel. No, man, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, you either are going to tell me it's gone, it's disappeared over the curve, or it hasn't, okay? If it hasn't, and you zoom in, then yeah, I'll side with you. Okay, it didn't fully disappear, so you're just zooming it in. That's how it works. But if you're going to tell me it's disappeared because it's gone over the curve, and now there is now a mound of earth disrupting the view between you and the object, then no, you can't bring it back into view. No matter how small it might be, it shouldn't be small at all. Okay, let's see here. Going back into the chat, Donald Ray says, JayDreamerZ, what about the flat earth being a diversion of a greater truth being systematically released to distract us from that greater truth and creating this movement? Well, Donald, I'm reading between the lines and it kind of sounds like you're talking about God or something a little more spiritual. If that's the case, then yes, you could say that it's a distraction, but just to be fair, what isn't, right? This whole world is a world of division. It's a world of separation. And when you realize and come to accept that separation doesn't really exist, it's an illusion, then you could say technically that everything is a distraction from the one thing that keeps us all together, the God that's omnipresent. You know what I mean? So in that case, everything is a distraction. If it's not focused on oneness and togetherness and unity, which is the hallmark of an omnipresent being, then it's inclined to be a little distracting. All right, let me jump back here in the chat. Let's see. Somebody asked if I'm drunk. No, I'm not drunk. Why would I be drunk? Why on earth? Why on the flat earth would I imbibe alcohol, get super drunk, and make a fool of myself for the world to see? Well, I can tell you why. Because that happens, and I understand. I do. And that's why I don't mind answering that question. There are people out there that do that. We live in a fallen world. We live in a really messed up and bad place during bad times. So I can see where, you might think that because that's the norm, that's something that I could be doing. But I'm not. I'm actually drinking coffee out of my invisible yellow cup. All right, back into the chat here. Sailing Bangarang says, JayDreamerZ, do you think that the earth can be a plant heart? I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I'd never discount anything. I don't believe in everything that I hear, right? I'm not called here to be naive, right? But just like it says in the Bible, love believes all things. There is an element of truth in everything, and it falls to us to sort of weed out those things. Another verse from the Bible that I like is that it's the glory of God to hide something. That's what God does, according to the Bible. God hides stuff. And this is the game. It's the cosmic hide and seek. The verse goes on to say it's the glory of man to search it out, to find it, right? That's what happens. It's a big hide and seek game. And that's why I like it. That's why I have fun doing these types of things. I like uncovering the truth. James says, JayDreamerZ, why do they take it so personal? James, it's not them. That's the problem. There is no them. It's us. We take things personal. We all do, Now, some take it a little more personal than others, but as long as anyone out there in the world is taking it personal, then that's an extension of myself, right? I'm not one of those YouTubers or one of those flat earthers who's going to immediately just label and blame and point my fingers and, say it's them, it's them, it's them. I can talk like that, but that's me lowering my perspective. The higher perspective sees that I'm connected with them, that there's no distinction between myself and them. That's at a higher level of thought, though. I do bounce around from different levels of thought, so I understand what you're talking about. And the reason that people take it personally is because that's how we're taught. We're conditioned for drama. Excuse me. Ever since reality shows became a big thing on television, and even going back even further than that, into the gossip columns of newspapers and things, we have been conditioned to really push drama. We want confrontation. We want people to agree and disagree, and then we've been conditioned to make enemies because of it. We shouldn't be enemies. We should be best friends. We should be people who are mature enough to talk about it, have a lively conversation and say, wait a minute, you think the world is a spinning, wobbling, flying ball through a nothingness? Like, okay, that's funny to me. Like, let's talk about it. And the other person should have the freedom to go, wait a minute, you think the earth is flat? Like flat like a pancake and like a table we walk? Okay, well, let's talk about that. What we should not do is resort to name calling, being childish, taking things personally. You can't take it personally because it's not yours. You didn't make the earth. That's why we're speculating. That's why we are working on philosophy. I did a video about philosophy being dead, right? Is philosophy dead? I mean, the topic of flat earth is quite literally and actually a world view. It's how people view the world. And if we took that same concept of how we treat the mainstream treats flat earthers, and we applied it to the homosexual community or the religious community, there would be backlash. People would be, oh, you know, that's not right. However, we're encouraged to put down flat earthers. We're encouraged to laugh at it. We're encouraged to joke at it. We're encouraged to even bring harm to certain people. Let me jump back in the chat. Third Eye Productions says, I couldn't agree with you more, JayDreamerZ. Bangarang says, JayDreamerZ, do you know where the words planet Earth came from? What are the words mean? Maybe they are a spell. Yes, planet comes from the word plane. Okay? It's a small plane of existence. It's a plane-et, like a cigarette or cigar-et or a marionette. The word et implies small and even feminine, usually. But it's a plane of existence, and Earth comes from eridu, or arets, or many other words that implied the home of the gods is essentially what it translates to. It means this is the home of the gods. Because that's what the gods named it when they landed here, when they got here, way before mankind. Alright, but I digress. Customer C says, JayDreamerZ, explain rainbows. Does the official explanation make sense? No, not to me. The official explanation for rainbows doesn't make sense to me because according to my understanding of rainbows, the light has to like reflect or refract, I forget which one this is, off of two things in order to create the rainbow. That's why it's very difficult to recreate a rainbow inside. I believe that there is some sort of barrier between our ground level and what we consider the limits of our sky. Okay, I believe that there is a barrier that holds and separates our world and our realm from other worlds and other realms. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds a lot like space, JayDreamerZ. And I'm not saying that the concept of space is entirely wrong. All I'm saying is that I have a different perspective on it. I don't believe space is empty whatsoever. Like I said, I'm more inclined to believe that space is a giant ocean rather than emptiness. I don't believe in emptiness. I don't believe in separation. I believe that there's a connection between all things. Let me jump back into the chat here. I really want to hear from some more globe earthers. Vivian Elizabeth Marquez de la Garza says, JayDreamerZ, you're talking about being tolerant towards all people. Unfortunately, I don't see much of that in our current society. Thank you for promoting tolerance through your words. Vivian, you're absolutely welcome. I think that the world would be a much better place. Everyone doesn't need to agree with everyone else. You don't have to have the same view as I do. You don't have to have the same walk as I do. But just because you're different doesn't mean that you deserve to die. It doesn't mean that you deserve to be insulted or put down or laughed at. You know, I don't deserve that. Neither does anyone else. The ball earth believers don't deserve that either, you know? And there's been too much ridicule when it comes from our side of things. I expect more from flat earthers, and I have always said this. I expect so much more from any truth seeker out there when you're dealing with people who have a different view from you. I expect you to be the bigger person. I also expect you to fail from time to time. I do. Right? But I expect you to work on it. I expect you to acknowledge it. I expect you to grow. Really, is what I expect from myself. Where was that? Epic Gamer says, JayDreamerZ, do you think there's any aquatic creatures living in the ocean space? Yes, I do, actually. And I believe that a lot of television shows and movies have actually dropped us a lot of breadcrumbs as to those beings that exist beyond our sky. And I'm not talking about aliens and little flying saucers. I'm talking about like beings similar to beings that exist in our ocean. I'll say that. Oh, Louis Hackett. You know what, Louis Hackett, I want to stop and give you props. I want to give you some acknowledgement, man. Because I have quite often invited globe earthers or people on for debates or whatnot, and they've almost always gone unanswered But I respect that you come on here and you're able to participate and ask questions and have a chat with me about these types of things without things getting into the immature category, you know? But we've already talked about that, right? Louis Hackett says, JayDreamerZ, if a boat can be brought into view by simply zooming in, it hasn't disappeared bottom to top. If you do bring it back by zooming in, keep watching. Don't discount the ball. I'm sorry, Louis, but the boat's going over the curvature of the Earth thing, all of the evidence that I've seen points to that the boat is going away. And that's all. It's just, it's getting smaller and smaller, the size of a pixel, because it's really, really far away. Things get smaller the further away they go, until eventually they disappear, either from the view of the camera or from the eyeball or from whatever's looking at it. It eventually disappears. That doesn't mean it's not there. It's just really, really far away. Now, do I believe that the boat is curved around and has gone down underneath me, or that the airplanes have flown to the underside of the ball and that they're upside down in relationship to myself? No, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see it, how that would be. I don't see any evidence for it. I don't see any proof. When it comes to things like that, science gets very mystical at that point. They get very magical, and they start talking about the giant tractor beam called gravity that pulls us in and sucks us to the earth. But I've seen no evidence for gravity. None. And you know what? This is the first thing that people like to do, right? This is what the uneducated tend to do. Oh, you don't believe in gravity? Watch my vape pen. Oh, how did it fall, right? It's very simple. The vape pen is more dense than the air around it. It goes downwards to the area of more density to find its family of density, so to speak, okay? And it's a lot more involved than just density, but like I said, for me, these things are simplistic. There should always be a very simple explanation to the things that we see. I'm just jumping back in the chat again. Customer C says, what about elemental spirits living in the clouds or the sky? We'll have to talk about that one another time. A perceiver feeling bored says, JayDreamerZ, I appreciate your replies, bro. Big heart. I believe the biggest problem in our world is misidentification. People too often believe that they are the body and that their thoughts are them. I agree, however, it's a little off topic, so we'll have to chat about that another time. James J. Rock says, JayDreamerZ, it was very difficult to get the record studio to allow my Flat Earth reference, Infinite Plane EP. Well, that's not hard to imagine why, because that's the system. Spurs Chemo says, JayDreamerZ, where will World War III fit into Flat Earth? Do you think Flat Earth will be the pretext for war? Do you think there will even be a World War III? You know what? I'm going to say that that's a little bit off topic. Let's go ahead and get back to the globe Earth. We're trying to allow, we're really talking about the globe Earth. That's what I would like to talk about. Sailing Bangarang says, if you remove E out of planet, you get plant. And if you remove the H, you get heart. Customer C says, JayDreamerZ, buoyancy cannot exist without gravity. Gravity gives the vector the direction of the buoyancy. Okay, so, I mean, what is gravity? That's my question, really. I'm honestly wondering, what is gravity? Because most people, when they think about gravity, they would say, oh, it's the force that pulls things towards the earth. But there's a problem with that, because that's not the definition. That's nowhere near the definition. Gravity has to do with mass. Everything should have gravity. Everything should have these little tractor beams that are constantly sucking in to attract other tractor beams that are weaker than itself. Okay? But I've seen zero evidence, zero proof, nothing as far as proving that gravity exists, showing me. And then people say, well, the Earth, we can't do an experiment on Earth because Earth's gravitational field is too strong. Oh, okay, so Earth's gravitational field is strong enough that we can't conduct any good experiments about gravity here on the Earth. It's pulling down the world's water supply, keeping it stuck to the surface of the ball, top, sides, and bottom, right? I don't see anything supporting that, you know, like this cup has gravity. My hat has gravity. Everything should have gravity. And yet they only focus on things we can't really deal with, which are these planets and stars and all that stuff way out there, or the Earth itself, which is the topic that's up for questioning, right? So when we talk about gravity, for me, you're talking about a magical, mystical thing. And it's not because I'm stupid and I can't grasp my mind around what gravity is. Yes, it's a force that's supposedly pulling objects toward the center of another object, okay? But I haven't heard it explained in a way that actually makes sense to me. I have not seen it proven. I have not seen it in existence. And when people say that's why stuff falls down, that's a poor explanation for me, the listener. And it's not weighty enough for me to go ahead and believe in this magical force, this tractor beam that exists within our planet, or within all things. All things should have tractor beams. All things should have gravity. I don't see any evidence for this anywhere. Gravity sounds ridiculous to me. Gravity sounds as ridiculous to me as if I were trying to describe a wizard throwing a fireball to somebody else. You know, like, to them, that would be like, okay, well, that's fantastic. Well, so is this concept of gravity, that we're all sucked and stuck to the surface of a world that's a ball that you can walk around, go underneath. There's no up, there's no down. And yet, in all of the pictures, they're always showing America right side up. You know, they manage to always get their satellites in that perfect, let's show America up and down, right side up. You know, like, when is the planet upside down? You know, like, nah, man, I've just, none of this makes sense. I'm not buying it. And it's not because of my intellect. Believe me, I've already gone and proven my mainstream intellect to the rest of the world. I have no need to prove it to any of you people. But if you've watched my channel long enough, then you'll get a sense for what kind of an intellect I have. But don't make the mistake of brushing someone off intellectually simply because they have researched an alternative view than the one that you have. I'm just jumping in the chat to see. Remember to spell the JayDreamerZ correctly or it won't highlight it. Algiz says, JayDreamerZ, has the Cavendish experiment ever been repeated? I have no idea. I don't know what the Cavendish experiment is. At least I don't remember right now if I have heard of that. And see, that's something about me. I'll tell you if I don't know. I mean, it's so easy. It's so relieving to just say, wow, you know what? I have no idea. I never heard of that. I don't know what that is. Doesn't mean that that's excuse for my ignorance. It doesn't mean that I'm right about the things that I'm inclined to look into. It doesn't. David Morgan is in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, do you think that the Earth goes through seasons like we go through yearly, but on a larger scale? To me, that would explain things like the Great Flood and the Ice Age. Yes, absolutely. Everything moves according to the law of cycles. It's a rhythm. There is an ebb and flow to life. There is a pendulum that swings one way and it swings right back the other way. Gaia Kame, or Kame, says, JayDreamerZ, what are your thoughts on sightings of purple lights seen in the sky? It's got something to do with the dome. That is a little bit off topic. I'm sorry, but we can chat about that another time. Dreamy Life says, JayDreamerZ, where is the 24/7 live cam footage of what it is that we live on? Have I ever read the holographic universe? I have studied the holographic universe, and that's a good question. You know, where's the 24/7 live stream? There are holes in all of these things, and those holes are one of the reasons why I am a flat earther, a flat earth researcher. It's not a flat earther as in somebody who just blindly heard something and went okay with their snaggly tooth and didn't look into it, didn't study it, didn't know anything about it, but just believed it for the sake of believing it. If you're a flat earther because of those reasons, that's your prerogative. But I respect that just as much as I respect anybody else believing blindly whatever they're told. Colo says, JayDreamerZ, it's the kind of banana you find in every supermarket. I think you lost me there, sorry. Lucid Legrand says, why is it that the so-called planet Earth is the 7th planet? We have 7 days in a week and have 7 continents. There is a lot more, something about the number 7. Well, in short, I believe the number 7 is directly related to Enki or Yahweh and that whole story. Let me see if I can get back some more questions here. Mike Terrain says, JayDreamerZ, is it true that you were on a show? You have a video uploaded once where you were on some movie. Yes, that is true. I was in a, this is totally off topic, but yeah, I was totally in like a little B movie playing, I had like one line in a B movie a long time ago. My uncle is, he works at a theater in California and he needed extras. So he asked if I wanted to be in a movie and I was like, heck yeah, I want to be in a movie. Whoa, sorry. Just going over the chat here. Customer C, JayDreamerZ, I think it's a step change in gravity that caused the flood. It's a step change in gravity that caused the Titans to rock and roll. Well, I have zero evidence for gravity. I don't support gravity. I don't believe in gravity. And it sounds ridiculous and fantastic to me. If anybody does have any concrete, solid evidence of gravity existing in an object other than the Earth, or the sun, you know, everything should have gravity, then I'm willing to check it out. Hype Hillbilly says, JayDreamerZ, why does the sun's patterns work on a globe but conflict on the flat Earth? I don't believe that the sun's patterns do. I believe that the way that everything has been shaped and is taught right now, they have tried their hardest to make the paradigm fit the belief system, right? That they're trying to make the evidence fit their belief or fit the lie. Okay, so a lot of these things have been wrapped around. Now let me also throw something else out there for everybody, and this is especially for the globe earthers out there. First of all, I love you guys. I do. I love every single one of you. Okay, I'm not mad at you. I don't hate you. You're not my enemy just because you think that you live on a spinning, wobbling, flying, tilting, lava-filled ball. I don't hate you, man. It's fine. Like, you're just a person, just like I was a person, and I am a person. But yeah, as far as gravity, I don't believe in it, and I don't see any reason to believe in it. And as far as the sun's patterns working on a globe, oh, that's what I was going to say. Think about this, okay? For the last 500 years, give or take, the globe model has been introduced into the school system and into mainstream thought, okay? They have had the last 500 years to accumulate all of their indoctrination that they're going to regurgitate, just like religion, just like all the people who have gone to church for the last 500 years, your family and your father's family and his father's family, and you're getting all of this indoctrination, all of this programming, all of this dogma that's being put into your mind, and now you've become an expert at that same dogma, okay? Flat earthers are just stumbling back into this. For the most part, every flat earther I've ever met was once a ball earth believer, okay? They were a mainstream academic just like I once was, okay? But this is something that we're stumbling back into. We're brand new to it. We're gathering up all the information we can, okay? We weren't taught this in school. We had to go research for ourselves. So yeah, you know, the people who are part of the paradigm of the mainstream, they can come right out with about 3 hardcore facts about the ball earth that they live on. But that's because they were conditioned to do so. They were put through a school system for 12 years for many of us, okay? Sometimes more, put through a school system for 12 years of indoctrination, of hammering these trivia facts into your mind so that hopefully one day you can be an expert on Jeopardy and you can be called in as a witness or an expert witness or as an expert for the news, you know, when they're doing whatever. I went through all of that, okay? I'm not stupid. I'm not retarded. I'm not gullible by any means. These are things I personally have gone and looked into. And believe me, I had conflict of interest when I first started looking into it. And I had a lot of stuff that didn't make sense. I said, there's still some things, I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make 100% complete sense when I first started researching it. But then I did my own research. I went down my own path. And I said, you know what? This is really compelling. I have to admit, this is much more compelling than the alternative, which is the mainstream flying ball-shaped Earth. Okay, let me get back into the chat. Louis Hackett says, JayDreamerZ. The Cavendish experiment measures the gravitational force of objects. The experiment rules out electromagnetic forces and air currents as an explanation. Research Cavendish. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Cavendish or Cavendish. Anyhow, I will research it. I will check it out in my free time whenever I feel like it. Or maybe I won't. I don't know. But if I do, I'm certainly free to check it out, to look into it. And I'm glad that you mentioned that so that people can look into it. Now, still, because I haven't researched it, I'm going to tell you, gravity, I don't see any proof of that. Okay? And it's not just because I can't see gravity with my eyes, but it's because everything I've been told about gravity doesn't add up to questioning. It doesn't hold up to my sensibilities and common sense even. It doesn't hold up. It doesn't make any sense. It's just like this picture of the Earth and the moon. Okay, you saw that picture. And actually, I'm sorry, I digress. I was going to get back into why I believe in the flat Earth, but I'm not doing that in this particular video. But thank you for letting me know about that experiment, and I will try to remember to check that out. I don't check out everything that everybody tells me, because then I'd be doing nothing but doing that. But I will try to remember to get on that. Victoria says, JayDreamerZ, has your brother started believing in flat Earth yet? No, he has not. But he has an open mind. You know, it's something that I can talk about with him. And he doesn't ridicule me. He doesn't belittle me. He doesn't act all holier than thou. You know why? Because he knows. He's looked far enough down that rabbit hole that he can say, I can't say for sure, man, but I'm willing to listen to what you have to say about it. And that's why I respect him. Adam Young says, JayDreamerZ, if celestial objects are not spherical projections, it's hard to imagine the Earth isn't a ball. Not seeing Polaris. Okay, so here's the deal, right? We're told that, well, if all the other planets are balls and the moon is a ball and this and that, then we must be a ball. That seems like it's an error in thinking to apply the shape of an exterior object, the shape of something else, and say, well, that's what we live on. A lot of people have compared it to saying that the pool table is a sphere because the balls on top of it are a sphere as well, right? That's about as much sense as that makes. Not only that, but I've seen zero evidence whatsoever, zero compelling evidence, I should say, that any of the planets or any of those stars are spheres, okay? Like balls out there in the sky. They might be. And even if they are, that does not mean that it's definitive proof that what I am standing on is also a sphere. I don't believe that men can go to the moon. And if they did go to the moon, I believe that they would have to land right on top of that thing, because were they to walk around, you would see the astronauts fall straight back down to Earth. Because it's not sucking in everything. I don't believe it's keeping everything stuck to it if it is a ball. Okay, I'm back in the chat. Customer C says, JayDreamerZ, the moon is an old, malfunctioning sun, and that's why it's the same size as the sun. Now, that's where we can probably come together and get a little closer to being in agreement. Because I believe that the moon has a lot to do with the electric universe theory and a lot of Velikovsky's writings about his alternative version of the cosmos. Adam Young says, JayDreamerZ. Oh, wait, he already said that one. Let me catch back up here. Mike Terrain says, JayDreamerZ, what are your thoughts on quasi-luminous and bringing heaven on earth? I'm not going to talk about that right now because the topic is the globe, right? Let's talk about the globe. I'm waiting still. Remember, everyone, people are going to be watching this later on, and they're going to want us to get to the point. They're going to want to hear globe earthers jump on and say, well, here's why I believe in the globe, right? And I'm probably missing all kinds of stuff in the chat, but it's hard to keep up. Unlearn the system. We should organize a time where we do a video. The sky, each from different places on the plane. I agree, that would be great. You know, the more we can all get together and work together using the internet while we have it, the more beneficial it's going to be to us. We need to come together, we need to unite and put our minds together to really prove these things or figure them out. Pnuntz Clark says, JayDreamerZ, instead of a dome, could it be magnetism field? Yes, it very well could be. What I can tell you that it is not, from my perspective, is it's not just sky. This is a question that I have for dome earthers, right? If you have a pressurized system all the way around our planet, called weather, basically, for the most part, there's a pressure system moving through northern New York or whatever, right? It's pressurized. If you have pressure and you have a complete vacuum outside of that pressure, you need to have a barrier keeping the pressure in. You can't convince me and you can't tell me that the tractor beam is pulling in and acting as a pressure force. You can't tell me that the tractor beam is sucking in all of the atmosphere and keeping it from being sucked out into space. They even knew this on the movie Spaceballs, which is poking fun at there being balls in space, okay? They knew this and they showed it because the planet, Druidia, it had a covering around it to keep the oxygen inside. This is truth shown to us in fantasy, in the media, in movies and stuff like that. You see, they take what is real, they twist it around and they feed it right back for you as entertainment. They say, enjoy, here's your truth. Let's see, Rasta says, JayDreamerZ, playing devil's advocate, Occam's razor and the fact that a heliocentric model reduces complexity in explaining the movement of the wandering stars through the sky. Well, I would disagree. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but according to Occam's razor, the simplest explanation tends to be the best one, or the most correct one. I see the stars moving across the sky. Therefore, the stars are moving across the sky. Not the earth is moving underneath me. You know what I mean? And therefore it's me that's moving and I don't feel it, and you know what I mean, I just have to trust and believe that this is all happening, and yet I don't sense any of it. I don't see any of it. None of this is proving to me that the ground under my feet is constantly moving, right? And I'm gonna jump back into the chat in just a minute, but I want to compare this to something, right? How many people have ever been on a people mover? A people mover is like an escalator, but it's just the ground just moves flat. It's like a conveyor belt, right? So if you go to the airport, often they'll have real long conveyor belts, people movers, right? Now let's do this. Perform a thought experiment with me, okay? Let's say that the conveyor belt represents the earth, and that the movement of the conveyor belt represents the movement of the earth, of the ball earth, okay? So if I were to land on the ball earth, not being oriented to its speed or its velocity or its direction or any of that, then I would naturally expect to be disoriented the moment I touch down on this moving object, right? I would immediately expect to be very disoriented, going from non-movement in space, in gravityless, weightlessness, etc., to the object that is moving. Just like if you are on the motionless, non-moving ground and you step onto that people mover, whoa, it immediately throws you off balance, off base, right? That's the same thing with the earth. Now, let's take it a step further. Let's say that I'm on the people mover and it goes for quite some ways, right? Now, I get used to, I acclimate myself to the movement, I adjust to the movement, I get used to the people mover, its direction, its flow, almost to the point where I don't even feel like I'm moving. I almost feel like everybody else is moving. Let's just say that that's what's happening. Okay, so imagine in your mind, you're on the people mover, you're used to the direction that it's moving in, just like we are supposedly used to the direction that the earth is spinning and wobbling and tilting in, okay? They say that you're just used to it, that's all, right? Now, on the people mover, if you were to paint on the conveyor belt itself, on the ground that you can walk on, and you paint like colored segments, like squares, like hopscotch, right? You got square 1, square 2, square 3, going forward and going behind you. And you walk in the direction that the people mover is already moving in. Guess what? You're going to cover less land than you would if you walked against the direction that the people mover is moving in. What does that mean? It means that if the earth is moving this way and I'm walking the opposite direction, I'm going to cover more land in less time. That's just a fact. That's exactly how it should work out. That's how it works on the people mover. If I were to take 10 steps in the direction that the people mover is already moving in, and then I mark how far I've gone, and I take 10 steps in the opposite direction, and the people mover is coming at me, and I'm going the opposite direction, I'm going to cover more distance. That's my theory. I'll do a video on it next time I actually happen to be where there's a people mover, probably next time I go to the airport. But it's the same thing with the earth. You know, this is simple thinking. Like if the earth is spinning this way, you would think all of the airplanes, everything would want to go the quickest, fastest route possible to cover the most land. Well, hey, let's just travel in the opposite direction that the earth is spinning. Therefore, we cover more land. It doesn't matter if you're used to the spin. It doesn't matter if you're used to the movement or not, right? It's still moving the opposite way, and you're still going to cover more land quicker going the other way. Okay, so I'm back in the chat. If anybody has any comments or questions, I am listening. I would like to hear your thoughts on the ball earth, on the spherical globular earth. Another question that I have for globe earth believers is, why is it that people don't quote Neil deGrasse Tyson and just say it's a pear-shaped world? That's what he said. Let's not pretend like he was joking. Let's not pretend like it never happened. Your mascot, the talking head of science, says the earth is shaped like a pear. That is a ridiculous claim. How can we laugh at flat earthers and independent researchers when your mascots and your talking heads are saying the most ridiculous things that I could possibly imagine? I think there was something in the chat. Roman Hoax says, JayDreamerZ, why do ball heads... They're not ball heads. Okay, come on, let's not do that. They're ball earth believers, okay? I'm not a flathead. They're not ball heads. But why do they think that their model is the only one that predicts? The Saros cycle, astrolabe, and something else mechanism have predicted the celestial sky for thousands of years. That's a great point. That's a really good point. And what he's saying is that the models from all of these civilizations, no, not all of them, many of them, okay? Some of them, even if I'm being extremely honest, okay, are able to predict celestial movements of things in our sky and what would happen. We didn't have to have a ball earth model at all. But I'll tell you what, since I'm not really getting a lot of... Okay, here we go. Skulking Von Mooncresk. I like that name. Skulking says, JayDreamerZ, I might make a video on my thoughts on Earth, but I'm too tired and there's not enough text space, etc. Rasta says, JayDreamerZ, serious question. I'm starting to think that it's flat. But does the heliocentric model not reduce the complexity when explaining the motion of the planets through the sky? Hold on, I got to go back and pause that one. Okay. Serious question. I'm starting to think that the Earth is flat. But does the heliocentric, helio means sun, okay, for all intents and purposes, centric, centered, right? So the heliocentric model, this is for those of you who don't know, heliocentric means that the sun is the center of the system, being a solar system, right? But it's not a solar system whatsoever. It's an Earth system. It's always been an Earth system. But anyhow, the question, does the heliocentric model not reduce complexity? Let's just make that simple. Does it reduce complexity when explaining the motion of the planets through the sky? I say no. I say absolutely not. Because you know why? This is the main reason for me personally, is because those stars have not moved over thousands of years. And I know there's probably people out there going, oh, there's this one star that moved a tiny bit. It used to be here, now it's here or whatever, okay? No, not at all. I'm sorry. But if there's all this chaos going on, even if it's organized chaos in our galaxy, in our solar system, and through the rest of unknown space, I expect those stars to be in a different place quite often from year to year, even more so from decade to decade, even more so from century to century, millennia to millennia. You get the point. Those stars should absolutely not, and there is no good reason for those stars to be stuck in the same constellations, predictable, reliable, and loyal to the observer, okay? Those stars are the same, and they have always been in the same place because they've always been in the same place, because they're not chaotically moving. They're not going off in their own star directions. We are not, like this image down here shows, down there. That's not happening. Look how ridiculous that looks, right? There's the sun shooting through, and we're all just kind of spiraling out of control all the way around it. That, just simply explaining it, doesn't it at least sound ridiculous? Come on, let's at least give it that much. It does. It does sound ridiculous, right? It looks ridiculous. You want to draw little people onto that diagram, little stick figures that are holding on for dear life, like as they're flying around the sun, and it's flying around whatever, and everything's flying around everything. That looks like a really confusing, chaotic place to be. Now look at the picture underneath me. Which one looks peaceful? I'm just going to ask you that. I'm talking simplicity. I'm talking about simplicity, really. It's simple. The simple things are like getting a present from somebody, you know. I appreciate these things. It's not that I don't appreciate the complex, but that as I've grown older, I've learned to develop an appreciation for things that can be explained simply rather than those things that are complex. Not to dismiss the complex. Let me make that very clear. Dreamy Life says, JayDreamerZ, pilots say they never have to aim the plane's nose down to compensate for a curve. Same with railroads. Absolutely. That's all proof that the earth is flat. That's something I already know. You don't have to tell me this, right? I already lean towards the earth being flat. Now, do I believe it? Is it that way forever? Have I put my flag down? Have I made my stance? Have I declared myself forever and always? The earth is just flat and that's it? No, absolutely not. I have an open mind. Just like I had an open mind when I believed that the earth was a spinning, wobbling, tilting, pear-shaped, lava-filled world shooting through uncharted and unknown space, circling a giant fireball with a huge rock trailing it. Okay? Oh, let me get back into the chat here. Breedog823 says, JayDreamerZ, we might be under attack from a different race coming from Antarctica right now, and instead of being together right now, find a way to be safe together. I hear you on that. It is unrelated to the topic, though, so we're going to skip that. I appreciate it. Customer C says, last month I saw clouds behind the moon. One streak of cloud in front of the other. Okay, you know, the clouds behind the moon and behind the sun deal, I'm not convinced of that. There are flat earthers that believe that the clouds can go behind the moon and the sun. I'm not one of them, okay? And I have good reason for that. And this is something I want you guys to really pick up on, okay? Flat earthers are just like globe earthers. Globe earthers have no idea how their model works. They have no idea what's in the middle of the earth. They don't know a whole lot about it. They just have a lot of faith and trust in it, okay? There are a lot of flat earthers that feel the same way. They've heard it, you know, it lines up, it makes sense. They don't research it, they don't look into it, and they just go with it. Some people have seen pictures of clouds that look like they're behind the sun or behind the moon, and they go, whoa, there it is, boom, you know. That's the end of the story. But I have personally been on an airplane above the clouds, high up, and I've done a lot of research that indicates that's not what's happening. It has to do with the brightness of the object that's in front of the clouds, whether or not it will make the clouds look like they're closer or further back, or even be visible. But I'm not here to debate that particular topic. Let me get back into the chat. Okay, I'm in the chat. Rasta says, JayDreamerZ, you know how the planets go in retrograde motion? To the flat Earth, that's a complex path. To a globe earther, it's an orbit around the sun. For me, it's not complex whatsoever. It's only complex because we don't understand how it works, right? It's absolutely possible for things up there in our sky to go in different patterns instead of just from one side of the sky to the other side of the sky. I won't discount that simply because I don't know how it works. I believe that it is absolutely possible for the things in our sky to change positions and to move in different areas. Just like in I think it's called a styrograph, you know, where you like make a circle and the lines go in all kinds of squiggly ways. But I don't discount it simply because I don't know how it works. I'm trying to catch up to all the comments here. Geodesica Domes says, JayDreamerZ, why does the moon only light up the clouds nearest to it rather than uniformly lighting the entire region of the sky? That's a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question that pretty much answers itself. It's designed to have the listener think about it and to exercise their mind in regards to the topic, okay? Basically what he's saying is that when you look up at night and it's a real bright moon and there's clouds in the vicinity, the clouds directly under the moon are lit up. None of the other clouds are lit up, and it should follow suit. Now I'm talking about why I believe in the flat earth again. Well, that's one reason why I don't believe in the ball world, okay? On a ball world, the light should be, you know, a lot closer to evenly lit across the entire half of the world, as opposed to, you know, there being these local sunspots and local moon spots, I guess I would call them. Joe Fixit is in the chat, and Joe says, wouldn't snipers miss all the time if they adjust the shot due to gravity and the curve of the earth? I can tell you this much. I was in the Marine Corps, and I was an expert marksman in the Marine Corps. Well, I was an expert, okay? I was an expert shooting the rifle. Which means I had to hit the bullseye almost every single time from 200, 300, and 500 feet out in a variety of positions, sitting, bending, kneeling, and standing, okay? I hit the bullseye every time. I missed it one time when I was standing up from 500 yards away. I can tell you that during my teaching in boot camp, not once did they ever tell us to adjust for the spin of the earth or gravitational pull or any of these things. What I can tell you is that there is an adjustment for the drop of the bullet, okay? I'm just going to speak simply. But you can actually, if you have good eyesight, you can actually watch as the bullet goes up and then down, just like this rocket right here, by the way. It's the exact same thing. The bullet will go up and then it'll go down, and that's why you have to adjust the sight on your firearm, because the sight will force you to point the gun up if it's further away or keep it level if it's closer. But it's got absolutely nothing to do with the spin of the earth or any of this type of stuff. Nobody adjusts for the spin of the earth because the earth is not spinning. We're not rotating. I don't feel it. You don't feel it. Nobody ever feels it. It's not recognized. And, you know, I know that there's people that have said, I don't know if someone's mentioned this, but like the water draining in opposite ways or whatnot, that's a myth. That absolutely depends upon your sink, how your sink is built, and which way the water was already leaning towards as it started to swirl. If you go down and you just swirl your hand like that one time, the water is going to swirl in the direction that you just pushed it. If you swirl it the other way, it's going to go down the other way, okay? That's not proof of anything. Unlearn the System says, hey Jay, how am I doing with the Antarctica journey? I'm not thinking about that right now because I'm doing some other stuff. Do a jam session, that's funny. Mutu Batu says, JayDreamerZ, is there a dome and what is above it on top, air or water? I don't believe that it's air, not air like we breathe, okay? I'm more inclined to believe that it's more liquid in liquid form, but I don't know, honestly. What is behind it where it touches the South Pole? You know what? We're going to have to talk about that another time. I'm just trying to read through the chat here. YouTube Surgeon General says, more assumptions, their lived truth. More assumptions, their live truth. You're not doing yourself any favors. I'm sorry, guys. I have to understand what you're typing so that I can speak with you about it. Dreamy Life says, at JayDreamerZ, speaking of dome, ever researched sky glass? Yes, I have. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat. Have I abandoned my Antarctic expedition? No, I have not. There never was an expedition. There was just me saying that's what we need to do. We need to mount an expedition and go there. And I'm willing to do that. Geodesica Dome says, do compasses point to the South Pole? No, they don't. Compasses don't point to the South Pole. They point to the north. There is no South Pole. There never was a South Pole. Okay? There's nothing, there's no pole that you can go to in the south. Well, that's not true. There is a pole that they have put up, like a little barbershop pole. Okay, but there's no South Pole. Magnets point north. North is the direction that the magnets are pointing in. The opposite of that is where the outer areas, the areas furthest away from the north would be. However, if the Earth was a sphere, if it was a globe, if we lived on a globular planet, then our compasses would have to be spheres. Basically, they would have to be three-dimensional spheres that point. For example, let's say that the North Pole is, you know, from where I am, you can't go flat out across and find the North Pole because of the curvature. So the North Pole is going, I would have to point through the Earth itself. I would have to point directly through the ground in order to more accurately point at the North Pole. So would a compass. A compass would have to be able to point and have the freedom to point right through the Earth towards the north. But they don't do that. Compasses are designed to be held flat because you live on a flat plane of existence, and it's easy to tell you what direction it is on a flat plane of existence. Jumping back in the chat here. Colo says, JayDreamerZ, Cavendish bananas are delicious and you can find them in the supermarket. Okay, thank you. Third Eye Productions, KFH, says, JayDreamerZ, I have multiple photos showing clouds that appear behind and in front of the sun at the same time, which further supports that the sun and moon are much closer than we are told. I hear what you're saying. However, it's not convincing enough for me personally. I wish you the best in finding on that path, but it's not convincing to me to see that the clouds are in front of or appear to be behind the sun or the moon. Because you can just go up above the clouds and the sun will go up above the clouds with you. It seems to me so far to be an optical illusion. Okay, I've gone out at night and I've seen times when it appears like the clouds are behind the moon, but when I look really close and I have really good eyesight, 20/40 or something like that, I could see very far away. It looks like the clouds are passing behind the moon, but in reality the moon is so bright that it's causing that illusion. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm not buying that the clouds can go behind the moon or the sun. And I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon just because, you know, we're all flat earthers and it's all good. Nope, I'm sorry. I still have the freedom to disagree, and I'm not compelled by any evidence I've seen so far. That's not to say that I can't agree with you in the future, but I'm not with you on that one so far. Patrick Meyer says, JayDreamerZ, are you familiar with Brian Austin Lambert's 100% correct working model of the Earth and his talks about plasma catastrophe that's coming? I have no idea who Brian Austin Lambert is, so no. My thoughts on a future catastrophe, please go watch my video called The Revelation Sun. Tommy T says, JayDreamerZ, what are your thoughts on a sun simulator? Customer C says, JayDreamerZ, was the sky purple before the dome was put into place? Does the sun illuminate the plane, or does the dome illuminate the plane? Okay, guys, these are all... I love you guys a lot. I do. So, man, how long have I been talking for? I got to be honest with you. I thought that the whole chat was going to be full of Ball Earth believers that are just like jumping in. They're like, well, you know, this is my evidence for the ball, because that's what I'm really trying to do. I'm trying to give you all the opportunity to prove to me that your world, that my world, that I live on, that I need to change my paradigm. Okay? You're not going to change my paradigm. You're not going to change my worldview, if that is indeed your goal, by ridicule. You're not going to do it by mockery. You're not going to make the world a better place through these methods. I have opened myself up, I've made myself available, and I'm saying I'm willing to listen to your side of things. I would like to ask you questions about your side of things. Now, if there's anybody in the chat right now that is a ball earther and you would like to talk to me about proving the ball earth, let's do that. That's what this video is about. Joe Fixit says, JayDreamerZ, what do you think gravity is? I don't think gravity is at all. I don't believe in gravity. I don't see any reason that I should be inclined toward believing in such a fantastic and magical tale, which is ironic because I am inclined to believe in actual fantastic and magical tales like giants and titans and elves and all of the things that really did once exist, and our written record gives ample, heavy, and historic evidence supporting. There's nothing in the written record about gravity. I haven't come across it. As a matter of fact, I've come across a really great discourse by Immanuel Velikovsky that brings the concept and the theory of gravitational pull into question, and I highly recommend you guys check it out. I will make it available on my website when my website's finished. Lacrosse FA says, JayDreamerZ, any ideas on what exactly the firmament is constructed from? Yeah, I've got some ideas. I think it, for me, I'm just going to speak for myself, but I lean towards it being energetic, right? Like a force field type of a thing. Or if it's physical, I lean toward it being a type of silica, okay? And I did a video about that called Is the Sky Blue? Epic Gamer says, JayDreamerZ, has anyone used the flight paths of planes to see which Earth format fits the flight paths? I think so, but I don't know. Joe Fixit says, JayDreamerZ, gravity will be felt different on a flat Earth. No, it won't. Joe, there's no gravity. There's just none, okay? In your world, yes, there might be gravity. I give you that. But in my world, there's no gravity. There's no such thing as gravity. I'm not being attracted to the microphone here. You know, my clothes are not staying on me due to my gravitational pull. It sounds fantastic and ridiculous to me. Ashley BTS Stan says, if I could find it, I've changed my view from ball to flat to now I don't know. Now I just say it's all possible, and I guess I'll find out in the end. And Ashley, you can do that. It's absolutely fine, you know. In the grand scheme of things, it's not as important as figuring out yourself and working on yourself. However, because all things are related, I believe that it's equally important. Okay, and that's my walk. And you know what? All of my ancestors, the ancients of the world, our forefathers, you know, the giants whose shoulders we stand upon, all of them have indicated that we live on a plane of existence. Never a spinning, wobbling, giant ball that has a tractor beam machine inside of it sucking everything to the surface. Flying through uncharted, empty vacuum of nothingness and maneuvering through it. You know, there's so many things that don't add up. I've got questions. You know what? Since we don't have a lot of ball earthers, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask questions for the ball earthers. Maybe people can leave their comments or whatnot. But how does time travel work on a spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying spacecraft? Basically, that's what. If that's true, then the Earth is a spacecraft, basically. We travel around on the outside of it as opposed to the inside of it, okay? It's an environmentally friendly spacecraft where you can just hang out on the outside of it. Now, if that's true, how does time travel work? Because in order to travel through time, right, you have to take into consideration, here's the Earth at one moment in time. But if you're going to travel to this moment in time, you have to take into account the distance that the Earth has traveled from one point in space to another point in space. You have to take into account the amount of rotation. You have to take into account the tilt and the degree of tilt as compared to the degree of tilt initially. That in itself almost makes it impossible to travel into the future because you don't know where you're going. Okay? You can't go into the future on a spinning, wobbling, flying, tilting spacecraft when you have no idea where you're going to end up. If you even guessed at it, the odds are very good that you would end up dropped off in space while the Earth leaves you behind, or you would end up inside of the Earth itself, or maybe somewhere up in the atmosphere where you fall down to your death, okay? If you are a fan of the globular model, then I believe it would be very difficult for you to be a fan of time travel. And the same thing applies going backwards in time. If you're going to go backwards in time, you have to have the coordinates, the exact coordinates of where you want to go back to, which means you have to know the exact coordinates of where the Earth once was in relation to everything. Okay? It's very exact when it comes to that particular aspect of time travel. So that's one thing that I would like to ask ball earthers is, how does time travel work in your model? Okay? Now I can tell you this, the flat Earth model, time travel works perfectly fine because nothing is moving. You don't have to adjust or account for anything except for maybe, you know, buildings that may have been erected, things that were already there on the surface. But we're not spinning and wobbling and moving and tilting, okay? So time travel is very easy on a flat Earth. The other thing is gravity, you know? I would love for somebody to really just show me gravity in an object, okay? Even if it's super weak, like my cup or my vape pen or, you know, any type of gravitational pull. I've seen zero evidence. There's nothing there going on. I'm not inclined to believe in gravity. I'm sorry. NASA. Let's talk about NASA, okay? Now, all of these ball earthers, okay? The people who believe in the current model. If I ask every single one of them, I'm willing to bet that the majority of them would say no, that they don't trust their governments 100% with their lives, completely. Now, I know a lot of you want to say, yeah, they would. Of course they would, you know. They're all sheeple, they're indoctrinated, this and that. I don't think so. I think people are smarter than you give them credit for. They don't fully trust their governments. NASA is a government organization. So if you don't fully trust your government in general, that means you have to also extend some of that distrust over to NASA. Now, you don't have to. You can pick and choose which agencies of the greater government that you follow or you like or you trust, and what varying degrees that you trust them. But the simplicity of it is, do you trust your government? 100%, entirely, top to bottom. I don't. And there came a point in my life when my paradigm was shattered. My worldview was shattered, and I realized, wow, I can't trust my government. I shouldn't trust them, and I have good reason not to. So NASA is a government agency. Should I trust them? No, absolutely not. There are so many holes. The only reason that the Ball Earth movement has so much momentum is because of the quote-unquote pictures from space. There are zero, none, no pictures, no photographs from space. Not pictures that have been doctored up, not pictures that have been photoshopped, not pictures that have been changed. There are none, no pictures of the world from space in its entirety, okay? This over here is not a photograph. None of those pictures, none of those videos, none of these things are an actual, genuine article, authentic image of the world that we live on, untouched. There's no Polaroid, there's no picture, there's none of that, okay? And you can't tell me, well, it's a compilation, you know, because the scientists, they had to take the heat signature, and then they made the heat signature red because they like to, you know what I mean? No, just take a picture. Just show me. Just turn it around. You know, if you have the live feed from space, and you got a camera constantly pointed at a particular portion of the world, man, why don't you show off your ride? Show off. I want to see. Take your camera around the space station, float around, you know. Maybe you could even do a trick and like just let yourself go out, you know, and hold on to your little rope and take your camera with you and do some selfies. You know, maybe you could take something that'll just burn up in the atmosphere and just throw it down at the earth. You know, do something. How about a balloon? I mean, there's so many things that could be done that are not being done. And it's not that all of my evidence relies upon, well, they're not doing this to satisfy me. But look what they are doing. Look what they are doing. That's not real. Okay? Your senses, your common sense should scream out, that's not real, man. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no cars floating around in space above my head. Okay? There's just not. Anyway, this is just random thoughts that are coming to my mind. But the moon landing, okay? Just when you talk about flat Earth and you talk about the globe model, and ultimately we're trusting and we're putting all of our trust into NASA and similar agencies and organizations, okay? We're putting all of our trust to live vicariously through men who have claimed to do it for us. Men who get paid ridiculous salaries. Men who go missing for months at a time and then reappear out of nowhere. Men whose actions are questionable, right? Like the astronauts who supposedly went to the moon. I can ask anybody, if you just got back to Earth from the moon, how are you going to feel? I don't think that they're going to go, probably kind of depressed and probably quiet and probably kind of sad. That's how the astronauts looked when they came back. You know what I mean? There are too many holes. There are too many anomalies. Okay, it's been proven in my mind, beyond the shadow of a doubt. We didn't go to the moon. We can't go to the moon. That was filmed, man. The whole moon landing was filmed as a pretext to getting everyone on board to believing that we can go anywhere else. We have not gone to the moon. They haven't even told us. They haven't even lied to us again. They haven't even bothered. For 50 years. Not quite 50, but almost 50. We haven't even gone back. Don't you think with the way that our technology has evolved and things are getting better and more user-friendly and we're working and developing on bigger and better or smaller and better products and technology, how many times do you think we should have gone to the moon between 1970s and 2020s or whatnot, right? We should have made many trips to the moon. There should be a freaking Starbucks on the moon by now, okay? And I'm not exaggerating, because if we could go to the moon, that's probably one of the first things they would build on the moon, okay? But the problem is, it's not real, and you know it. You know the moon landing was faked. You know that there is something fishy going on with NASA and all these agencies. You can see there are hole after hole, anomaly after anomaly. I mean, there are things that are just evident. They don't even deserve the respect of elaborate debates, because they're simply explained, you know? Everything about the moon landing. There are hundreds of things about the moon landing that scream out that it's fake. And if that is the crux, if that is the one thing that I am basing my trust in NASA, who tells me that I live on a spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying, lava-filled, water-covered ball, through the vacuum of space, circling a giant fireball, then guess what? I have the right to start questioning my trust and my loyalty to that organization. Okay? Because the moon landing was the crux for it all. It was the quintessential proof that it was possible to get out that far to turn around and take a picture of our world. And it's full of holes. I mean, it's all full of holes. It falls apart. I don't even need to bring up pictures. I don't need to do any of this, okay? The internet itself is a wonderful, vast library filled with people's opinions, experiences, and walks of life that they have shared. And there's lots of information out there, plenty of information, that absolutely obliterates the quote-unquote fact that we landed on the moon, okay? We didn't go anywhere. We're all not even born yet for the most part, okay? The human race did not go anywhere. It was a few elected individuals who supposedly had gone there. And there are way too many holes and anomalies. So anybody that comes at me and says, well, I believe we live on a ball due to NASA, gives me insight into their mindset and who they trust and what type of information they've come across on their journey, okay? However, I immediately know where they're coming from, and I don't trust NASA, okay? I have zero trust for NASA. Zero. None at all, okay? That rocket right there is shooting off from the ground and landing in the water. That's it. It's very simple. That's why it makes an arch when it goes up into the air, because it comes back down. It's not my perspective and my eyesight, and the rocket's actually going really high up, and so it looks like, and then it's going to do a secondary motion, and it's going to blast off, and then it's going to use its little air bursts to turn around and this and that. No, man. I'm sorry. That's too complicated. That's too far-fetched. That's, it's not simple. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay? You can't even hang a left in space. There is no burst of air, pss, 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 you know, to get you moving in the other direction. You're in a vacuum. You can't push against anything. Okay? I've had this conversation with people many times. Okay. Back in the chat, Rasta says, JayDreamer, sometimes Jupiter goes from west to east in the sky. Sometimes it goes from east to west in the sky. This is complex but easily explained by orbits. What are my thoughts? Occam's razor. Well, my thoughts are, if Jupiter is going in different directions in the sky, then that's what that particular object is doing in the sky. Not that that's us moving around, and so our perspective and we see things differently. It's very simple. You see it moving from there to there because it moved from there to there. That's Occam's razor. That's the simplest answer. Why do you support... Oh, hold up. There's a lot of... Okay, guys, calm down. Hold on. Let's see here. It always goes really fast. Mutubatu says, JayDreamerZ, why do you support David Icke, and do you know whether he believes in flat earth? Well, I don't know what makes you think I support David Icke. I don't even know David Icke. What I do know is there are grains of truth and there are breadcrumbs in everything. And I have found many truths and many breadcrumbs that come from David Icke's research. That doesn't mean I believe in everything he believes in. I don't have to be a fan. Neither do you. You don't have to be a flat earther to enjoy my content, the things that I produce. I might talk about some other subjects that do resonate with you, that you do feel a little bit better and closer to in your belief systems and stuff like that. Okay? Just because I might mention David Icke or refer to him does not mean that I'm saying I give him my full blessing and David Icke is true on everything. You know what I mean? Everybody has something to offer. Everybody does. There's something there if you look for it, including in my own work. JayDreamerZ, do you believe the same that some mountains or islands in our world are actually titans? Yes, I do, but that's a talk for another time. Let's see, what else do we got here? Sailing Bangarang says, JayDreamerZ, can you open a Bitcoin wallet to raise the money for any of your trips? I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I'm just going to be honest with you. That's not my thing. I don't know anything about it, but, you know, I'm always open to, you know, financial help. I do accept donations from people, and it does help me to get things done, as you can see. My channel has really evolved because we've come together. And actually, I want to talk about that. Because the moment you start talking about money or accepting donations or whatever, let me make some things clear. One, I never ask for money. I never ask for a donation. And I only make that available because people have insisted that I make it available so that they can support my work and support what I do. Number two, because of that, and because of all of the donations and all of the support I've received from day one, that's why my channel is what it is today. I wouldn't have had the time to quit my job to research and do YouTube and write my book and work on my website and all of that type of stuff if it were not for my supporters. But as far as Bitcoin goes, I don't know anything about it. I'm just being honest with you. Okay, let's see. Who else do we have here? Corey says, I'm a glober and I love your channel. You see, that's what I love about that. I love that, okay? There are lots of people who believe in the ball earth, and it's okay. It's totally okay. It does not make you a bad person. It does not make you stupid. It does not make you gullible. It doesn't reflect on you in a negative way in my mind at all. Ever. It's simply philosophy. It's an idea. It's something to chew on. It's something to throw out there and to consider and to discuss. For some of you, you might take the next step. Some of you will take it from talk to action. Now, this is really what it's about. It's not about the shape of the world at all. It's about control. It's about freedom. This is what it all boils down to. And somebody asked me what the end game was earlier. The end game for this whole flat earth movement is freedom. And that's why it resonates with so many people. This is why you see news programs doing stories about flat earth. Even if they try to ridicule it or mock it or paint it in some sort of horrible way, The reason they're even doing it in the first place is because it has that much momentum. There are that many people that it needs to be addressed, right? Now think about it. If there are that many people researching it and looking into it, can't we also assume that there is some sort of substance to attract so many people to such a ridiculous idea? I say yes. And I'm speaking from experience because I found substance while doing my research. And I was swayed from being a spinning, wobbling, lava-filled globe, pear-shaped, whatever, flying through God knows where, to somebody that knows that I live on a plane of existence. Just like I always have. Just like has always been told in all of our stories. All right, I'm back in the chat. Yeah, if you want to help me out, that's fine with me. Because I don't know anything about Bitcoins or any of that stuff. Unlearn the System says, JayDreamerZ, time is a figment of our mind and we can control time. Time does not control us. We are programmed to experience this version of time either by the elite or through our DNA. You know, I tend to agree with you. We absolutely do control time and we do manipulate it all the time. We just forgot. See, that's a part of the fun of these things is remembering, right? But I side with you. Rasta says, JayDreamerZ, by the way, I live to Colorado Springs. I hope to see you somewhere someday. Well, tomorrow I'm actually going to be going to my first Flat Earth meetup here in town. So, I mean, you're free to come to that. I can't remember the name of it, so you'll have to Google it. But yeah. And this is, see, okay, let me speak for some globe earth believers. Since I don't have a whole bunch of globe earthers on the show right now, let me go ahead and speak for them, okay? Why do you think that you live on a spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying, lava-filled ball through space? And the ball believers typically say things like, well, we've got pictures of the Earth from space. Okay, pictures of the Earth from space. Check. Discounted. Because NASA admits there are no genuine articles. All of the pictures of the Earth from space are photoshopped. And even that statement is misleading because it was created in Photoshop, not adjusted, not changed slightly or manipulated or beautified. Okay? All of those pictures from start to finish were creations of somebody. They were drawings of somebody. None of those are photographs. Nicholas Brown made a $5 donation. Thank you, Nicholas. I really appreciate you. And says the retrograde motion of the planets in a geocentric model creates the flower of life pattern around Polaris, the golden ratio that all nature follows. You know, I've also noticed that too, that we see these patterns in life. And that's another topic, but I'm excited to talk about that one as well. Thank you again for your donation. Big Nick says, JayDreamerZ, if the world is flat, is it possible to jump off the edge? And what is over the edge of the world? You see, that's a part of our mindset. Every time people think of flat Earth, they think of the edge. What's the edge of the globe Earth? There's no edge. You know what I mean? Why does the flat Earth have to have an edge? There's no edge. People assume every time it's depicted, you know, it's always depicted as being a plate or a frisbee or something like that. What's the edge of space? You know, where is the edge of space? Why can't that be an acceptable question? Where's the edge of space? And if I go to the edge of space, am I going to fall off? Won't all the cats push everything off of the edge of space? You know what I mean? This is something people's minds just stop and they go, ah ha ha ha, the edge of the flat Earth. I don't know if the flat Earth has an edge to it, you know? It's just as ridiculous as saying that there's an edge to the universe. Maybe there is. But personally, if there is some sort of a boundary, I lean towards it being an energetic boundary, which gets us more into simulation theory. Basically, if you were to cross over that boundary energetically, that your coding for this particular matrix or this particular reality, your coding would have to stay here. Your essence would cross over, kind of like in the show Westworld. I don't know if you've seen that. But you would cross over. Basically, you would die. Okay, the body would die. The body would just fall apart, fall over, and your spirit would cross over if it matched the frequency of the boundary. Okay, I got off topic a little bit, but I just wanted to address that particular. That's a good question. All right, Carson M. Truth Seeker says, JayDreamerZ, what flat Earth map do you feel like is the most genuine? Also, how do you respond to refutations of said maps? The most genuine map, I have no idea. I don't pick. I don't care, honestly. I haven't been using any of the flat Earth maps to get me from one place to another, so it's not something that I have a lot of experience with. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I can tell you that people have only just recently been trying to come up with their own models and their own maps and whatnot, while the ball model has had 500 years to work out discrepancies and try to make little changes and tweaks here. Okay, let's give ourselves another 500 years and see where we go with our little maps and our little models and things like that. We just started, man. Sailing Bangarang says, JayDreamerZ, I've heard clips of female Clinton saying we've cracked the glass 18 times. Yes, she's talking about the glass of the firmament above us. Customer C, JayDreamerZ, do you think there was ever a supercontinent called Pangea? No, not at all. That's a fallacy. I see zero evidence for Pangea. I don't believe that the Earth is spinning, wobbling, flying, or any of that. I also don't believe that there is continental drift, that we're all just kind of, the land itself, solid and immovable, is just kind of floating around on top of the water or on top of the lava. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'll tell you what happened. There used to be a lot more land. Titans that did exist scooped out and terraformed our world, and then waters were introduced, and that land which was lower than the water level is now gone. That's it. Pangea is simply the Earth without the water on top of it. But no, I don't believe that the continents move around. I believe that the maps of the ball Earth are completely disfigured and disproportionate. And they purposefully make some things look like they fit. Like some continents just look like they fit the other continent when they don't. There's still land under the water, man. They're still connected. You know, they weren't squished together at some point. No, I don't buy that. Dreamy Life is in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, what do you think about turtle shells all the way down, Vedic cosmology, linking this with mud fossils of what we could actually be living on, etc.? Dreamy Life, that's a great question for another time. Unlearn the System says, JayDreamerZ, all the space agencies have the vector for their logo. Yes, they do. Sailing Bangarang says, JayDreamerZ, if Earth is a plant... All right, guys. Okay, so I'm gonna have to pause. We got to pause for a moment, okay? Think about this. We're doing a live video right now. You're having a good time on the other end asking unrelated questions to the topic at hand, which I respect because they're good questions, okay? But this is about the globe. This is about the globe model. This is about how I, as a flat earther, see that down there as being fantasy and ridiculous and unbelievable. I don't believe it. I'm not convinced. I'm not swayed. I'm opening myself to listen to the explanations from those who do believe in this. Why do you think that you're doing one of these numbers throughout an unknown God knows what? You know what I mean? Not only that, but let's think about intelligent life, like extraterrestrials, okay? The mainstream sense of ETs, extraterrestrials, right? Now, we assume, if we go by that model down there, that there's extraterrestrial life out there, and that they're so advanced that they know how to get from their world to our world. But think about this. Do you see what's happening down there? Do you see all of that craziness? And that sun is going on its own craziness somewhere else? And these beings from light years and light years away, they have to have mapped our world and know where it's going in order to even get here. You know, where is it going? We don't even know where it's going. We have zero idea where we're going or any other planet or any other system or star or anything. How do aliens from light years and light years away First of all, find any interest in our world. Second of all, have the time to study our world when they're that far away trying to watch this wobbling, tilting, spinning, flying ball and zoom in on it to even find any interest at all to even being here. It just doesn't add up to me. What does add up is if there are extraterrestrials, right? Which means beings that are not from this land, okay? If there are ETs, or if there is intelligent life somewhere other than terra firma, then it seems like it would be really easy to find this particular Middle Earth plane of existence if it doesn't move. If it's constantly and steadily and reliably always in the same spot, then yeah, I would think that the advanced forms of intelligence who are here before us can easily find out where we live. They can easily come and go and visit us, etc. Not on that model. Excuse me. I'm starting to lose my voice, so we're going to wrap things up here in just a bit. I'm going to read a few more questions and comments. Carson Truthseeker says, JayDreamerZ, do you think Trump's new space protection thing has anything to do with flat Earth? Also, people have claimed government documents admit flat Earth. Can you explain this? I can tell you this much, Carson. This whole Space Force deal with Trump, the simplicity of it is that there are extraterrestrials. There are beings who were here before us who made us, or who had a hand in making us. Those beings have let it be known across our written record, and across every history, across every culture, across time, that they will be back. That they are going to come back one of these days. Okay? And many of those things say that they can possibly come up from the earth or down from the sky. We have been conditioned and trained to fight the invaders that come down from the sky. So guess what I'm going to say? I'm going to say let's examine that and question that before we dive right into the shallow end. Okay? I'm not going to be aiming my guns and my weapons up at the sky if I do see aliens open up a portal and come in. That's what they have conditioned me to do. I have to ask myself why. Wait a minute, what do these alien beings have against me? I'd like more information on it before I just go slaughtering alien beings and civilizations who I know nothing about. That's barbaric. Okay? So no, we don't need protected and we don't need this and that. We need to protect the world from ourselves. Great question. Corey says, JayDreamerZ, I love all the questions Flat Earth brings up. I believe the Earth is round, but space does not work the way we think it does. Scientists act like theories are facts. And I couldn't agree with you more. And that's all there are. Science has a lot of theories involved. Okay, gravity is a theory, not a fact. The world being a spinning, wobbling, tilting, lava-filled, water-covered exo spaceship flying through uncharted vacuum of nothingness, hoping that we don't bump into anything along the way, is a theory. And that's the truth of it. There's no fact involved. It's perspective. It's experience. It's your worldview. And guess what? It's real to you. To you who believe that the earth is a ball, it is a ball. To you, in your mind, that's your reality. It's your experience. To you who believe that it's flat and a plane of existence, that's how it is to you. That's how it is to me right now at this particular moment on my path. My path could change. I never know. I leave myself open to that. Okay, Roman Hoax says, JayDreamerZ, playing the devil's advocate, why don't you believe in the ridiculous concept of space and time being curved by balls? And which aliens do you want Trump's Space Force to fight first? Dude, I don't want anybody to fight first. I'm not in favor of fighting, okay? I'm in favor of defending yourself should somebody encroach upon your freedom. But I'm not in favor of starting intergalactic wars with races that I know next to nothing about. Okay? And I know more than your average person about them. Everybody else out there, they're clueless. They're going to absolutely just, they're going to divert. And they're going to do whatever they're told to do. Because that's what lemmings do. That's what followers do. Okay? But that's why I do what I do. I want to give people the tools so that they can break themselves free from their mental prisons. That's what I want. So the question, sorry. Why don't I believe in space and time being curved by balls? I don't know. I didn't really say that. But I don't believe in space the way it's been presented to us. I don't believe in time the way it's been presented to us. There are esoteric and secret teachings about the universe, which means one word, right? There are secret and esoteric teachings about our history, our origins, our life. And I understand those teachings and their application to what I have been force-fed my entire life. That one's a little harder to explain, but basically, it's not that I have a sense of constant paranoia about everything. Oh, you know, like everything's out to get me, everything's bad. No, it's quite the opposite. You see, I am a floodgate of positivity, of potential, of manifestation, of energy, of creation myself. I have all of this in me, and I'm not sharing it with the world. I'm not going about painting the world a little bit prettier where I think it looks ugly. And that's my fault. That's things that I need to work on. Those are things I need to work on. I'm sorry, I'm digressing. Let me get back in here. Okay, we're going to do 5 more minutes, and that's it. This didn't really turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out. I thought there would be a lot more ball earth people. It's so easy to talk about all the reasons why I believe in a plane of existence. It's so easy to just list off all the holes that are in NASA's moon landing and, you know, all of the space hoaxes by the different agencies and, you know, just pointing out all the anomalies and the various pictures and stories and all the things that don't make sense. That's easy. That could take up a lot of my time. But you know what I don't hear? Ever. Almost ever, okay? Unless I purposefully go and I watch a documentary about the particular subject. I never, ever, ever hear people who devoutly believe in the spinning, wobbling, tilting, flying, lava-filled ball world. Pear-shaped ball world. I never hear them going around talking about why they believe that, you know? I never hear them going around proving to other people this is why the earth is a ball. We've been conditioned to accept. That's the explanation. We've been conditioned to accept the paradigms that are presented to us. We have been conditioned not to ask questions. Now, am I saying this is all wrong? Am I saying this is all 100% absolutely a lie and my word is the authority on that? No. No, I'm not. What I am telling you is I am showing you from my path, my current perspective, I don't buy that. That is unbelievable to me. I have found something better than this explanation down here. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying I'm not convinced. Okay? And the reason I want to do this video is allowing you fine people out there. Now, don't get me wrong. Almost everybody who watches my channel already has a mental capacity to think outside of the box, or at least to begin to. Not everybody who watches my channel is a flat earther. Not everybody who watches my channel believes in conspiracies or the Illuminati or mud fossils or giants or elves or titans or time travel or any of these things. But some of those topics resonate with some of you. Some topics more strongly than others. This is one topic that I find myself to be very excited about, very passionate about, because this is a doorway to your freedom. This topic, and being able to just discuss it freely, is the practice that we need in order to ask more questions about other things, about taxes, about laws, about governments, about institutions and jails and prisons and courthouses and martial laws and all this stuff. This is a practice field. It's a playing field for you to get a little bit of practice and go, wait a minute, oh, I can question what I'm told? Wait a minute. Now, questioning what you're told does not mean that you automatically jump to the conclusion that what you're told is wrong. It doesn't. It means you hold off your judgment. You reserve your judgment while you gather more information, while you allow things to marinate, while you figure things out. You need to be patient. We Kalengo says, JayDreamerZ, why would the elite bother so much about faking the world shape? That's the last question I'm going to answer, because that's a good one. And that's the most often asked question that I have ever heard. Why would the world's elite bother to go through this elaborate lie? Well, it seems to me like the simplest answer is typically the best answer, right? If it is a lie, if all of this is a huge conspiracy that's been going on for hundreds of years, and there are a handful of people in the know about it who have been working the puppet strings of an entire planet for hundreds of years, why would they lie about it? Well, the simple answer to that is they must, if that's true, they must have something important enough to hide from you to lie to you about it, right? I don't have to tell you what it is exactly, but I can tell you that it would make sense that whatever it is detrimental to your freedom. Personally, I'll give you an even simpler answer. My personal opinion on that is that they don't want other lands to be revealed. They don't want the secret history of our world and your family lineage to be exposed. They don't want you to know who you really are, who you are really related to, what you are really capable of. They don't want you to know your origins, because if you start talking about giants, you start talking about titans, you start talking about the gods in the ancient times and the antediluvian times, you start talking about the age of Saturn, all of a sudden you start going to acquiring a lot of information, which is potential power. Knowledge is power, they say. About you. You are going to empower yourself. You're going to be empowered by understanding more about who you are, why you're here, and what you're going to do about being here. They have stripped that all away, and they have made it so that you're isolated with a small storyline, and they don't tell you any of these things about yourself. You know, people used to be born in tribes and clans around the world. They used to be born into families that would naturally just tell them these stories. This is who you are. This is your purpose. This is why you're here. This is what's happening in the world. This is the true history of things. This is where we come from. We don't know these things anymore. And taking a plane of existence and wrapping it around itself means you are creating limitation. You can't leave. You can't escape. You can't move about as you feel free. So you accept that you're stuck. You don't try to go anywhere. You don't try to leave, because in your mind there's nowhere else to go. So why would you? Right? They don't want us exploring. They've already got a lock on this world. They want to keep it the way that it is. That's one reason. Other reasons are financial, you know, but because money doesn't really exist, I don't lean towards the financial one. I've heard that they're hiding God. You can't hide God, man. God, the definition of God is a being that cannot be hidden because it's omnipresent. It's everywhere, okay? You can't hide God at all. You can give yourself a mental complex so that you don't recognize God when you see God, but flat earth and sphere earth and all that, none of that is designed to hide God. Now, if by God you mean a physical, actual, two-legged being that has walked our world and had a hand in creating us, then okay, yeah, maybe it's trying to hide those gods, those aliens, those elven race, whatever you want to call them, okay? But my idea is that they're hiding it because they're trying to keep you limited, okay? They don't want to talk about giants. They don't want to talk about the gods. They don't want to put their faces in the public light, because the moment the people know who their captors are, they realize that they're in captivity. They're being kept in one little spherical, globular world. None of that story makes any sense. You got cars flying around in space. You've got a giant globular tractor beam sucking everything in, keeping the water stuck to the surface, and yet being lenient upon the air and the nitrogen and these other things. It doesn't suck them all to the ground. The clouds are not sucked down and just boom, you know. There shouldn't be clouds. The water vapor in the air should be pulled to the ground all the way by gravity. But it doesn't do that. But it does pull down the oceans, right? Anyhow, I think I made my point about a great many things today. What I would like to leave everyone with is, first of all, be good to each other. Just be good, man. You know, choose to take the path that you know is the best path to take when it comes to how you treat yourself and how you treat other people. Just because a person looks different, dresses different, sees things different, believes things different, doesn't mean that they're stupid, that they're immoral, that they're a danger. None of those things. And the time will come when you will not be allowed to voice your opinion. You will not be allowed to practice philosophy. You won't be allowed to question things, okay? Because the mainstream story, if we don't question it, if we don't speak up and speak loud and let our voices be heard, that mainstream story, the status quo, will be written into law, and you will be forced to live accordingly. Right now, at the very least, I have the freedom to get on here and speak in a limited manner to try to drop some small revelation upon you so that I can give you some sort of a breadcrumb, whatever it may be. In the future, should things continue on the way that they are, you won't have that freedom. You don't have the freedom to go up into space. You don't have the freedom to just fly through the air if you want to. You don't have the freedom, and I'll talk about this in my Grand Canyon video, you don't have the freedom to go into the earth. You're not allowed up there. You're not allowed down there. You need to stay right there, right in the middle, right where we can see you and keep our eyes on you. Not me, man. Not me. So, that's why I wanted to do this. If you're a globe earth believer, feel free to leave comments and let me know, what it is that really has you just extra convinced. Like the number one or number two thing. Please try to come up with something that's a little bit better than, well, we've got pictures from space, right? I saw with my own eyes, my grandpappy, he was an employee for NASA, and I saw the rocket launch one time, okay? Think about these things before you leave the comments. Before you start talking to flat earthers as if they had no intellect, I would advise that you show some respect when entering into this particular arena and assume that we do. Assume that we do have some intellect enough to not just blindly walk into things the way that the rest of the world does. To not just blindly believe what we're told the way that the rest of the world does. The way that we once did. As we were growing up, going through school, becoming indoctrinated, watching other people develop trends and wanting to be like them, or, you know what I mean? Don't make the mistake. Now, if you do believe in that this is real, okay? These images, this picture, these diagrams over here, not this one, but these ones over here. I mean, I'm all ears. I would like to hear why this is so heavy of a weight for you to believe in something that to me is quite ridiculous when you explain it in the simple way that I have presented it here today. I have an open mind, and I have to admit, the reason why I'm inviting you to do so is because a part of me hopes that as you vocalize it, probably for the first time in your life, for many of you, you will hear how it actually sounds when you start trying to describe the things that have been presented to us. Stuff like that. If you start really breaking that down and little air spurts in space to turn and all that, man, I hope that you hear how ridiculous it sounds. As opposed to something very simple. A flat plane of existence that has mountains and valleys, okay? That is immovable, that is reliable, that is loyally and faithfully always here for you. It's not shaking you off balance. It is a rock that does not move so that you can know where you are. If you're constantly moving, how can you ever know where you are? How can you ever get some positioning on your life? I see it very simply. For thousands of years, my ancestors knew that we lived on a plane of existence. And I trust that. I trust that that's the way it had been for a very long time because those people knew about it. The reason that they knew about it is because, one, they were told about it by their creators, by their gods. Two, some of them were lucky enough to actually be taken up, out, and away from the world, and they saw a plane of existence, and this is how it has been described ever since. If they were to be taken up, well, for example, Enoch, right? Enoch was taken up into the different levels of heaven, which just means sky, basically. If Enoch went that high up and saw the whole world and knew that it was a flat plane of existence and then sees a ball out in space, I would expect that he would definitely make mention of that in his writings, because that would be a mind-blowing thing to see. But I don't find that in Enoch's writings. I don't find that in anybody's writings, actually. Not going back to the ancient times. But like I said, these things have been hidden from us. This guy's in a swimming pool. He's wearing a deep underwater diving suit. This world has presented you with a great many twists and turns to the labyrinth and the maze of life. It falls to you and no one else to find your own way to the center. Thank you for joining me. I'm JayDreamerZ. And for many of you, I'll see you tomorrow during my Silver Linings broadcast. I'm sorry, not Silver Lining, Sylvan Lining, okay? Sylvan Lining is a segment that I do every Tuesday, and it's really going to focus on the positive side of truth-seeking. I want to help to remind myself and other people why we do this, why we look into this, why we put ourselves through such torture, and why we allow ourselves to experience such negative revelations about conspiracies or lies we've been told, or our world view has been shattered. I want to remind you and I want to encourage you so that you can get refueled and press on. So hopefully I'll see a lot of you tomorrow during my Sylvan Linings broadcast. And thanks for your time. Bye.
I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play. I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play.
JayDreamerZ. Think outside the box.